Very first submitted. Okay, so past Councillor Roger Henneberry, welcome here. It's good to see you back around this table. So we'll start. You have, would you like to do your individual submission first? Or?
I was going to do grey power first,
Grey
if you don't
Power's
mind.
first. Okay,
See
so
what time I have left.
You have 9 minutes. The 9 minutes includes questions. The clock's up the top here, so you've got 8:58 left. It's not. That's,
so you're using my time up again, Mayor?
So yes, I am. No, the clock's not actually ticking away.
Oh, thank you.
So now that 9 minutes includes questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. And as you say, I'm Roger Henneberry, and I'm Hamilton Grey Power President. I'd like to just point out that we have 1,670 paid up numbers, and that equates to well over 2,000 members paid up in Hamilton. We are a 65,000 member organisation, and we do lobby government directly. That's what Grey Power does. And on Monday mornings, we have seminars, and this, well, 2 seminars ago, we discussed your long-term plan. And this Grey Power one isn't the views of everybody, but it's the views of a panel of between 40 and 60 people that turn up to our seminars. So just to put that straight. Okay, on your challenge and borrowing for everyday costs. We do not agree with any of your options that are there. It was quite clearly put that Grey Power have to live within a budget, and we expected you to. It is eye-watering as your increases, and you talk about big pictures, and the big picture for Grey Power is simply regional councils' rates are going up 4% plus average, and as you all know, average means more to a lot of people. Your 9% increase, which means more to a lot of people. The loss of the power rebate means that a lot of our members are going to be $1,000 worse off this year. And I mean that seriously. I've had members crying to me, what are they going to do? In fact, some have said, look, we'll leave Hamilton. I'm saying, well, don't do that, please. The council has to work around this. And I suggest that you go back to capital value in the period of the 10 years you'd put in place. We do not agree with you going to the 10-year plan, coming back to 2 years to be fully capital valued. It is draconian for some of our members. In fact, to most of our members weren't happy with that. So we strongly say to you, stick to the 3.8, please. Our older people talk about budgets and cutting the cloth and tightening the belt. A lot of our members, not many now, from the Second World War, the Vietnam War, they've done their time. Average people, I'm talking average people, not people like you who are dynamic, who've gone out and got yourselves a good job on council. I'm talking about people who've had families, no savings, and all they've got is their asset, no cash. So that was the general opinion, you know, of most of the people. I wish you'd been there, actually, and we'll probably ask you to come along to one of our meetings, because I think our members are quite restrained. There are a lot of them elderly. They might have been quite rude to you. They might have been quite rude to you because they feel you've been rude to them. So if you could just bear that in mind, please. Question 2, do you have any ideas about how council could change the way of rates calculated? There wasn't a consensus because older people just couldn't get a handle on how they can get a better cut of the action, if you like. They just don't read the guff that you put out. You may think, well, they should, and it's their responsibility to do, but I think when you get to their age, it's just over the top of their head. It's just too much for them to evaluate, and living day by day is just what they do. Question 3. Look, I've put down, look at your costs and reduce them. Delete some of the capital projects. Live to a lower budget. Our group, Grey Power, cannot believe you employ over 1,000 staff. When I was here 4 years ago, we had 738 staff. I believe you're over 1,000 now. I think you're pushing 400 extra staff in 4 years. We're just bemused as to what's happening in this place because your salary cap is tremendous. And if you was to cut back on that, I mean, if you was to cut back on that, it would make a big difference to your rates. Okay, and I'm reading this because somebody else has put this together for me. Question 4. Peacocks or Rotokari? Now, when I was on council, it was always going to be Rotokari. Peacock's topography and the infrastructure that's there wasn't going to carry it. But of course, along came the government with your free loan. And wow, did that change the game. But my view, pragmatic view, is you have to pay that back. So sometime there's going to be a payback, and it's again going to be the ratepayer that subsidises it. It's the ratepayer that's going to subsidise it. So anyway, Peacocks was ticked really because you said it's going to be cheaper. You said it's going to be cheaper, but I question that. To move on, do you have any ideas how council should change the way rates are calculated? Again, there was no consensus with the large group that was there. They still have no idea of the business and just how you could change it. It's a blunt instrument. And you know, we can't make it sweet, really. Okay, question 3 on page, well, whatever page it is, I'm sorry, I've got it down here because it's been photostated. Do you have any ideas about changes the council can make to increase its revenue to cover everyday costs? And again, they've just said, look at your costs, reduce them, delete some of the capital projects, live to a lower budget. We can't believe how many people, staff you have. Push back on government requests. I noticed in the paper this morning, we're hell-bent on doing 3 new subdivisions. That's fantastic, but you haven't asked the public out there, or Grey Power, just how big do they want Hamilton? Do we want Hamilton to be eventually another Auckland? The question that you should have asked is, how far do you want us to push? And I would suggest you push back on government. I see my time's going pretty quick here. Number 5, how does city grow? Needs for growth, but how big? And you know, and I just talked about pushing back, and the community there, our people don't know how to handle that question, frankly, and they trust you. They're hoping that you'll be able to make the right decision on their behalf. That's why they voted for you. A lot of you talked about accountability and cost, and they've put their trust in you because it's too big a job for them to look at. So Grey Power's put the trust in you, their councillors, to do the right thing. Because really, it's going to bankrupt some of them, mentally bankrupt them. Okay. 6, we're going to spend $250 million on transport improvements. I'm sure Councillor McPherson's had a big do in that one. It's a lot of money, and I think you should do what is the most essential parts in that. And if it means cutting back on some of that money to balance your books, I would like you to do that on behalf of Grey Power. Question 7. Do you have any specific transport projects you think council should consider? Well, we went to Christchurch and they have an integrated cycle footpath option on 2-metre wide pavements and shortcuts through subdivisions to connect. We think that that's a good idea here for Hamilton too. I don't think that you should be pushing them onto roads where there's just no room for roads. And also to get this done on resource consents, and developers and new residents pay for their own amenities. All this development you're doing is actually going to be eventually subsidised by the present ratepayers. No, he's shaking his head. Well, I think that it does, and that's our view anyway. We're on to challenge 4, and we've put no to all these new things that you're putting down simply because we haven't got any money. I see I'm 18 seconds, Mr. Mayor, and I'm hoping to finish. Costs and affordability should be a priority at these times. There will be 1 million superannuants by 2020-25, depending who you listen to. Some of you will be in this bracket. Question will be able to afford Hamilton rates on a fixed pension. Now think about being a superannuant. I know there's no questions, and a cynic in me will say that
Councillor Hanbury, your time's up, so can I ask you now to move on to your personal
Yes, of course. Yes.
presentation? Thank you.
Right. Well, challenge
So,
one.
the time's up on the board here. It's 4 minutes.
Okay. Challenge one here is, the options just do not.
Sorry, I'll call you Councillor Hanbury. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah,
Roger.
well, I don't mind that, Your Worship. I'd like to be the 13th councillor and see that you do the right thing, I hope. Okay, look, 3.8% is what I'm sticking to. My rates personally is going up $1,700 this year on one property, and it will be going up $2,800 in 3 years. So I'll be paying over $6,000 on top of regional rates, etc. I am also a pensioner. When you can't afford it, you have to look at the cheaper options, and I suggest that you look at cheaper options and cut back on a lot of stuff that you're putting in. I call your 10-year plan a Christmas wish list, and I think that it's appalling that you're not looking at the cost of the New Zealanders. The Hamiltonians that live here has built Hamilton, and if you don't regard the Hamiltonians now and say the city's bigger than the people, then you've not got a city, and I think you're going to knock the heart out of the city with this increase. I don't agree with the capital option coming forward. I think you should do as promised, because we've all budgeted. Question 8, projects. No, I don't go along with the zoo. In fact, I wanted the zoo animals 12, 15 years ago, stuffing. It would have been a cheap exhibition. Skate park's great. We've got some sports park drainage. I think it's a good thing, but I said no, because I'm really saying no, 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 not to be negative, but to keep the costs down. And then you're going to have a challenge at the end of this to decide what's your priorities. If you can keep to priorities, I think you can come out the right end. My prediction is if you don't, you're a one-term council. Because the people out there, I'm telling you, are angry. I was in the pub the other day and a guy got stuck into me because he thought I was still a councillor. I said, no, I gave him all your names. So I hope he comes and visits you. Really, and I guess another anecdotal thing, I was in Flagstaff the other day, there was an old fella in there, I'd never met him in the life before, and he was raving about this council. And that's a general feeling I'm getting. I'm not only about there, but also my friends. I think you need to, you've shocked us. You've made us, our eyes are watering with this increase. They really are. And I'm sure a lot of you have had this comment back already. You've got a minute for questions.
Okay, Councillor Gary, one question.
Thank you, Roger. Your presentation both were of a similar vein, and it was, I think, that you want the rates increases too high. Can you be more specific in the projects or the existing things we're doing that you feel your people or yourself would be happy to see cut or eliminated?
I hear what your type of question is. A lot of people here are really saying, trust you, you're going to prioritise because you know what's going on. Biggest problem I have is the theatre.
But Roger, I think we just need a little more guidance than that.
Okay. I think I'm just trying to think. Look, Central Parks. Central Parks, we have 144 parks that we look after. I don't think we need any more parks. We are a green city. We really are. Fenced dog exercises.
Central
Garden
Park
Place
is the thing in the Victoria Street. Is that what you're talking about? Or
well,
you're talking about
look, the Garden Place. Garden Place.
Excuse me, Gary. Can we just let Roger finish his question, please, his answer?
Yeah, well, look, we've got 144 parks throughout the city, but Garden Place in particular. We've thrown money at that. We've just thrown money at that over the last 10 years. Please don't do any more money. I mean, I don't like it as it is, but I don't want you to spend money to alter it. Hamilton Gardens development, I think it's fantastic. I'm really glad you're going to charge to go into there. But look, enough's enough. You know, enough's enough. I think it's big enough. Indoor recreation, I know some people feel we need it, and probably for young kids, yes, it's great to have that facility. Can we afford it? Maybe not. Playground development, I was on the playground committee that did it, and we were really, I like the playgrounds, and we've done quite a few, but it makes your eyes water at the cost. Roger Turner Community Hub, maybe we need to leave that off at the moment. It's a lot of money.
Thank you, Roger. That's time's up, so thank you for your presentation.
I've got 30 seconds left, Your Worship.
Sorry, keep going.
Thank you for your patience. It's going the other way now. Oh, I'm negative. Okay. Look, I'll leave it at that. I just hope that you make the right decision, because I'd like you to think about the hurt you're doing to our older community. It doesn't affect me that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay Cumberpatch. Sorry. So this is D.B. Bryant Trust submission. Vic Arcus, welcome. And welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you have 9 minutes, and it's if you can just see the countdown on the board here at the bottom right-hand corner, and that includes questions.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko o te hiamana o D.B. Bryant Trust. Ko o te mokopuna tuarua o te manakura o D.B. Bryant Trust. Ko Vic Arcus taku ingoa. I'm Vic Arcus. I'm the chair of the D.B. Bryant Trust. And our submission, thanks for receiving our submission. We'd like to draw your attention to two things in our submission. The D.B. Bryant Trust is one of the oldest philanthropic trusts in the Waikato. We distribute about $1 million a year in funding to community organisations. And so one of our main points is that we'd like to see the council prioritise both social infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure in their plan. Our mantra is enhancing human welfare in the Waikato, and so as well as the housing areas decision at Peacocks and Rototuna, we'd also like to see a cross-sector housing plan that ensures all Hamiltonians are well housed. Now, we don't think this is solely up to the council. We think this needs to be a genuine cross-sector plan. This has been done in other areas. We point you towards the Wellington City's Mayor's Task Force for Housing. And in fact, this has been the subject of discussions at the Community Funders Forum, which is a quarterly meeting of many of the large philanthropic organisations in Hamilton. And so we would like to offer the resources of the D.B. Bryant Trust to try to get a genuine cross-sector plan together to house all Hamiltonians, including the public sector, the private sector and the not-for-profit sector. And we encourage you to include that in your plan. Thank you. And Lindsay will speak to our second point.
Thank you. The one area that the consultation document is silent on is the levels of current or future community assistance grants funding, and so we were wanting to recommend that the community assistance funding budget be increased to match population growth and inflation. I've had the privilege of being on the committee for the last twice, back in 2015 and again earlier this year in terms of the multi-year grant application process, and I am aware of how challenging that process was given the needs. And so I've produced some statistics that come from your own community development group that indicate that in terms of the league tables compared with some neighbouring TLAs and some other significant metropolitan areas, we don't do terribly well, second to bottom in fact, of the 9 in terms of our investment in our community as a percentage, 0.5%, half of 1% of the total income of council. So we are happy to play our part as a philanthropic trust. We'd just like to encourage the council to maintain a reasonable level of investment in key community assets like community houses, like community theatres and key community organisations, so that indeed this can be the vibrant city that we all want it to be.
Okay, questions. I only take one question from each member, and I want the questions to be short and precise, and I want you to give short and precise answers. I've got about 6 people here waiting with questions, and we've got to get through in a time. So, Deputy Mayor.
Capital value and the transition.
We did say that we could live with the transition being increased faster, that's going to put pressure on our own tenants and on ourselves. But if you're saying that's what's required, we can live with that. Yep, short answer.
Councillor Siggy.
Much, Mr. Chair. You just talked about housing that serves the people of Hamilton well. Can you just quickly elaborate on that, what you mean by that exactly?
I think that the housing question is very complex, and so in order to house everyone, we need more than one strategy, and we need the involvement of all of the members of the sector, including the finance sector, the private sector, the public sector and the philanthropic sector. And so in order to house everybody, we feel that there needs to be a comprehensive plan about how we're going to do that, in addition to making land available.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
Lindsay, you talked about the community assistance grants, and thanks for that study work that you did on that. We did some work recently that showed there hadn't been an increase in actual terms, let alone inflation-adjusted terms, since 2012. Would you think the inflation adjustment you're talking about should be backdated to then, or start from now?
In a perfect world, it would be nice to backdate it, Dave, but I appreciate some of the challenges in terms of the council budget. So just going forward, I mean, I'd be happy enough with just increasing it from now. But I think we do have to recognise that the city has grown significantly, as you know, in the last 7 years in terms of these statistics. And even at 2% inflation, you add 14% over 7 years, you know, we have gone backwards at quite a significant rate. And council asked us to consider some other things, like covering, you know, aged, celebrating aged thing, all that when we came to do our multi-year grant allocations, and it really was a very challenging process.
Could I make a suggestion on that topic, that we bring our funding to the same level as Palmerston North?
Councillor Ryan.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Lindsay and Vic. Just on that figure, Lindsay, you mentioned as a percentage of total council income. What was that again?
Half of 1%,
Right.
0.5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Vic was rather cheekily suggesting Palmerston North is 2.37%.
Right.
So just, they're at the top of the table.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks. Thanks for your submission. What do you think is the primary cause of the higher cost of building houses?
We've discussed this in the Community Funders Forum, and it very quickly becomes complex. The cost of land, I think, is a very significant factor, and that seems to be one of the circuit breakers. And then the other issue that we've discussed at length is the availability of capital to build social and affordable houses, and this is a very tough nut to crack as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Just before you go, I want to thank you both, Lindsay and Vic, and DV Bryant Trust, for what you do for the city and the heart you have for it and what you've done over a long period of time. And I know that you're involved in more things than what you're facing, the organisation you're representing today. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Okay, James Bevan. Thank you, James. You have 4 minutes. It's in the bottom right-hand corner. That includes questions. So, including questions, yes.
Okay, so I'll just make 2 points then. One, you'll hear a lot about affordability and about Hamilton being affordable. And there's a lot of comment in the press and from submitters about affordability. The Taxpayers Union did a report on all councils in the country. Hamilton sat in the bottom third for affordability. So we're one of the most affordable councils in the country. even if you did a 12% rate rise, it will bring up to parity with Taupo District Council. So I'd rather live in a nice city, not a cheap one. So a lot of the things you are proposing in this 10-year plan are positive things for Hamilton. They will bring positive aspects to Hamilton. Don't suffer the history of a rates control council where we have to borrowing for operations and renewals. Bring us up to a parity with some of our partner councils in the Waikato region and start thinking about making this a positive place where we can actually fund things that are good for the city. Second thing, one of the things dear to my heart is the Hamilton Gully restoration. It was a positive, very engaging piece of work that was probably put to one side about 10 years ago, 8-10 years ago. The last piece of gully restoration in Rototuna with all the full walkways and the pathways and bush was completed in about 8 years ago. Nothing much has happened since then. You have got a very positive community out there. Positive community are out there working on gullies. They are building pathways, they are planting, they are working with your restoration groups. They are working with council's own nursery to bring plants in and provide the labour. So what is missing in that system is the vision and the overall plan that they will work towards. If council was to provide a vision of what that gully could look like in 8-10 years' time, and for Mangiiti Gully, that's a really nice vision of linking up the future Gordonton Sports Park with the existing walkway and making those community connections in through, then that community would work for you and help you build it because they're doing it already. They're just not building it to a plan. So provide the vision, provide the opportunity to connect between the community groups, and the trusts can leverage extra funding for you to help implement. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin, one question, please.
Well, thank you for your submission. Just any views? I notice you're suggesting a parking deal for out-of-towners, but so you capture them, so basically catch them in terms of the free parking.
Yeah.
Is there any other things we should be doing, perhaps, because that is obviously, as you know, the issue of people who live on our doorstep but don't pay rates?
That's
how
correct.
we can capture some revenue from them to pay their way?
That's a residence parking scheme would be something that would be relatively easy to implement and relatively easy to therefore enforce. It's just an idea. I don't think of anything else immediately,
Cool.
other than coming into partnering with other local authorities to fund certain things that are of regional scale.
Regional fund.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor, we've only got time for one more, so I'll take Councillor Paula, as she hasn't asked a question today yet.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question was going to be on your comments about pedestrianising from Alma Street to Garden Place. Is that as far as you were going to go? So does that include Worley Place?
Yeah, I think you've incrementally started going there anyway. It was a discussion that was had about 8-9 years ago about when we started doing the town centre upgrade, whether that should be pedestrianised. It's now to a point with Victoria and the River, with Worley. You've got a range of opportunities to think about the next step in there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. Okay, we've now got Kote Pacifica. So we've got two different submissions. We've got one from the board first, and then what's the difference between the board and the organisation?
Wilson, our chair, put in a personal submission, and I also put in a personal submission speaking to the same issues. So what we were hoping to do was, since we're all speaking to the same point, was to utilise our time as a whole, all for speaking to the same thing. So if that were acceptable to you, what we were proposing to do was to have our Deputy Chair open with a short prayer, then I speak to the key points of the submission and then utilise as much of the time as possible for questions.
Okay, so I think I understand, Rachel, that you want a submission, so that's 4 minutes. Edgar, you are doing a personal submission, so there's another 4 minutes, and then the organisation and the board doing another one, which is another 10 minutes. So that's a total, and you guys need to sort it out amongst yourselves, as your 9 minutes for the organisation and board, and 4 minutes each for your submission. So that's it's about 17 minutes total. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I think we can work with that. Thank you,
And
Your
you
Worship.
guys can, I'll let you guys, we'll put 17 minutes on the board. You guys can bring in members and take members out however it suits you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
You happy with that, everybody? Yes. Okay. So 17 minutes on the board, please. And we'll, it's on the bottom right-hand corner, the 17 minutes includes questioning times. So, thank you.
Let's come to God in prayer. The world turns, the sun rises, the morning has broken, and God, this is the beauty of your creation. We thank you that you promise us that where 2 or 3 are gathered, you are there in the midst. God, we welcome you among us today and celebrate the gift of life that you have generously given to us. We ask that you open our ears so that we may hear your voice. Open our minds so that we may receive your eternal wisdom. Open our spirits so that we may know your leading and guidance. And open our hearts so that we may receive your wonderful love. God, you have entrusted us as stewards of your creation. Please guide the hearts of the mayor and the city council members as they make their decisions. God, we seek you first in all we do together. We offer you our business today. May we be always mindful of your presence. We confess that we are nothing without you, and our trust is in you completely. We ask all this in the glorious name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Talofa lava, tēnā koutou, and warm Pacific greetings to you all. You will have all read our submission and the supporting documents. I don't propose to read the submission verbatim, rather to emphasise a few key points, but also to speak to some issues that have bubbled since the submission was filed. A couple of introductory comments. Pacifica do not appear in the draft 10-year plan. We do not appear in the Waikato plan either. There are over 15,000 Pacifica living in the Waikato region, 15,000 Pacifica who are contributing to the fabric of our city and the greater region. The population is growing. It is estimated that by 2028, in just 10 years' time, there will be approximately 26,500 Pacifica in the Waikato. It is time for our city and our broader community to recognise the contribution that Pacifica make to our community in workplaces, in schools, in our sports teams, in our music groups, in our tertiary institutions, in government departments, and in our churches. Culture Pacifica has been asking for a place for a community space for well over a decade now, so it should have come as no surprise what we are asking for in the context of our submission in the draft 10-year plan. We are asking for a draft 10-year plan to recognise Pacifica in our city and specifically to be included in the plan through the provision of a centrally located site for the Pan Pacifica Community Hub. You all know what it is from the submission itself, so if I move on to some key points. Why do we want a centrally located site? For visibility, accessibility. Pacifica communities are spread across Hamilton, A centrally located site provides good access to public transport and access to central arterial routes, and through the strategic positioning of Hinemoa or Beetham being close to the FMG Stadium and other sporting amenities, this is an important part of engaging with our youth, as well as the fact that we will be near to one of our long-standing partners in education, Wintec. We have worked with Wintec for a number of years through student placements and other initiatives, for example, Māori and Pacific Trades Training, and we utilise their facilities to deliver programs as we simply lack space. Discussion with Wintec has been ongoing around developing the medical practice into a dedicated education unit and the possibility of becoming an academic research centre. Being located near to Wintec in that context just makes sense. A site anywhere other than a central location will potentially isolate parts of our communities and impact on the furtherance of our strategic aims with Wintec. What are we proposing to do with Hinemoa or any reserve site which is on the West Town Green Belt? What we are proposing is not to undermine the Green Belt, but to enhance it and achieve a broader community outcome. We intend to retain as much of the West Town Green Belt as possible, open up the site to provide access for the public and activation of park space. In terms of what the hub building might look like with the medical practice and the ECE, we are working with your staff to make sure that we are working within council requirements and constraints. The district plan requirements and designation of activities, etc., will inform the practical aspects of the design. What is proposed in terms of the ownership model for the land and the building? We are set to invest $10 million into building the Pan Pacifica Community Hub. Those are the estimated building costs as at June last year for Hinemoa Park. If we are going to make that level of investment, then we need sufficient security around land tenure, as it is clear that once built, the building cannot simply be picked up and taken away if the council falls out of love with us and removes us from the site. The ideal model would obviously be transfer of ownership to Kota Pacifica. Being reserve land, it appears that may not be possible. So failing that, it would need to be a long-term lease renewable for a period of time which recognises the investment of $10 million onto the land. I understand the community occupancy policy provides a maximum period of 10 years for leases. It is understood that under the Reserves Act, the maximum lease period for reserve land is 33 years and that renewals are permitted. The feasibility model envisages 50% funding and 50% borrowing to meet the costs of the hub. I have been having in-principle discussions with the major banks who have all expressed excitement about the project and in principle would look to invest on a loan-to-value ratio of 50%, but all have expressed the same reservations around the terms of any lease of council-owned or administered land. The terms of the lease from a bank's perspective would likely require sufficient time to pay down the debt before the expiration of the lease. And I think the point that I'm trying to make here is really around the fact that we will need to be working very closely with you around what any lease requirements might be, and it would need to take into account the constraints that banks would be putting on us moving forward. And I know that there are also examples around the city where the council has worked closely with community groups in order to achieve community outcomes that deliver positive outcomes for all our peoples. Who will be affected by the proposal? The people who will be primarily affected are obviously our Pacifica communities in the Waikato, but the other people that will also be affected are the non-Pacific service users of Kota Pacifica, because our services are not exclusively for Pacifica. The general public will also benefit from the activation of park space and retention of as much of the green belt as possible. The last thing I want to emphasise really is the timeline. We have some funding from Trust Waikato, $2.2 million. By 4 September next year, we need to be in a position to, we need to have obtained all of our funding, and we need to have entered into a contract to start the work. So we've got some tight time constraints in that respect. The only other thing to point out is that we did submit around the money that's put aside for multi-year grants and single-year grants. The gentleman, two groups before me, was making the point very well. Basically, it would be great to see an increase in those amounts moving forward, if only to reflect the increase or the rate of inflation. I think that I would like to have as much time as possible for questions, so, yeah.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Rachel. At the start of your submission, you said there was no mention of Pacifica in the plan, but Pacifica, like everyone else in the community, use roads, sports parks, water systems and things like that. So where specifically do you want to be mentioned? I'm not sure of any other ethnic group that have, I mean, no Pākehā said we haven't been mentioned in the plan.
Gary, well, have you got another question?
No, that's my question.
I think.
So what would the plan look like if it had mentioned Pacifica? What are you wanting in it?
Well, we have been asking for a space for a community facility for quite some time. That's one way that we could have been included in the plan. The problem for Pacifica is that we are often overlooked, and I'm here speaking for Pacifica. I'm not speaking for other community groups. That every different group in this city had the opportunity to make a submission.
I would support that answer. Basically, it's a lack of identity, lack of recognition. I use the analogy: if you took the Pacifica out of the Chiefs, we'd have bigger problems we've got now. And it really, quite seriously, that one of the effects of not recognising is that us Pacifica start to become a sense of not being part of the greater community.
But what does recognising mean?
Oh, recognising means the sort of thing that Rachel's talking about, providing the opportunity to establish their own identity in terms of a Pacifica hub. Māori can do it through Marae, Pacifica cannot. And there's no question that there's a need for a specifically designated medical centre for that purpose, as one as the other areas.
Can I speak?
Yes, please, come.
There's a whole history to this proposal.
Can you come on?
Okay. So just to add to what Rachel has said, there's a whole history to this proposal in that we have worked with the City Council for the last 14 years in terms of developing and establishing a community building facility for the community here in Hamilton. So there's been a series of feasibility studies that have been done in the past, and I think one of them was going to be in the 10-year plan, but it never made it. Somehow, somewhere, it got shelved. So we've continued to pursue that ourselves, knowing that we cannot deviate from what we've been asked for by the community about 20 years ago when we had our first community whono, and that was to have a specific facility that would house relevant, appropriate, culturally appropriate services that would improve access, improve the quality, improve the use of their languages, would help with the raising of our children in this community. And so we've felt that it's really important that we continue this. So adding on to what is happening today, we are still trying to pursue what we were asked for 20 years ago. And I guess that's the recognition that the feasibility studies, one of them was a great one that was funded by the City Council itself.
Okay, we'll move on from that question.
Thank you.
You can stay at the table if you like. Councillor Ange, I've got a list of people here, so there's one question from each person, please.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm just looking on page 13 of your submission. It's your project timeline for construction, etc. You're starting construction, all going well, in January next year with a 12-month construction phase. Is all of that program in detail there based on your preferred option of Hinimau Park, or is that fluid?
Unfortunately, I should actually signal the apologies from Lala Uramea for PCM Consulting, who's the consultant that put this together, but also Craig McFarlane from Midlands Health Network, who we've been working very closely with on this proposal. And it is my understanding that it's a project timeline that would suit any site at this point in time. I see Hamilton City Council Bowling Club, Founders Theatre and Wintec as possible site options are referred to in the document.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Very quickly, have you had, out of Auckland, I presume you're looking for the similar sort of an arrangement in the Midlands region, like New Plymouth, Rotorua, etc., or have you had any, are you looking at setting this kind of thing up in other cities?
Well, one of the obvious things is if it works, it's something that could be replicated in other cities throughout New Zealand. For example, Christchurch could probably benefit from a hub. But in terms of us being the lead provider for the Airetai Midlands Collective, it will work as a bit of a hub and spoke type model. So it wouldn't just be us that are benefiting from the community hub. We intend that it would have a much broader community benefit. Does that answer your question?
Oh, no, just wondering if there are other ones set up around the country.
Nothing like what we are proposing to do at this point in time. So it is innovative, it is a social enterprise, and just really wanting to enforce that it is an exciting opportunity for everybody that's involved.
Cool, thanks, Rachel.
Just to follow up on Mark's question, you are a Waikato-based organisation, you're not a national-based organisation.
No, we are not a national-based organisation.
This is for what's good for the Waikato, not what's good for New Zealand.
Yes.
Okay,
I was
not.
just looking at something we could draw comparisons with. So,
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your submission, Rachel.
I'm just picking the order off and people who haven't spoken earlier to be fair to everybody.
Just a question probably more for your chair, Edgar, just regarding that submission, the contribution of the $2.5 million? Or,
Correct.
I understood that was a bit precious in terms of timing. So
Correct.
How crucial is that if COTA doesn't meet their deadline of timing, do you withdraw that, or is there a bit of flex around that?
Despite the fact I'm Deputy Chair of one, I'll leave that to the CEO to answer. It might be a better idea.
There is flexibility for a one-year extension, but we are mindful that there is a lot of money locked up there.
Excuse me, could you come to the microphone so we can get you for the live stream, because it's being recorded on camera?
Yes, sorry. There is flexibility in terms of a one-year extension, but we are mindful that there is, $2.2 million that is locked away that if is not utilised in a length of time, that could be used for other purposes. So that's why we see that this is an important thing to get on with.
Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. My questions are three parts of the same question.
One question, please, Paula. I've got someone else to wait out of
Three parts
time.
of the
So
same
to be
question.
fair
Thank
to the
you,
next
Mr. Mayor.
person,
So
I just need one question, Paula.
So my question is, you need a piece of land from City Council within a time to pick up the funding. You're looking for favourable lease arrangements, and that will enable you to get underway with something that's been on the books for a long time. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin, last question.
So I obviously acknowledge Elizabeth Corrales and our Minister and esteemed leaders. Just one quick question. One of the take-homes from me, I just want to stress, you said you would be obviously working and with our council staff in terms of, if you occupy a part of the green space, you're wanting to accentuate the public access and the synergy between the Whānau and the Pacifica Hub and the green space. I just want to make sure that I've heard that correctly.
That is correct, Councillor. And in fact, part of our, if you like, predetermined thinking is exactly around that.
And just confirm, you have been on this journey for over 20 years.
I was very young when we started.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Koto Pacifica. And we do, I think this council is very grateful for what you're doing for the Pacific community. So just on behalf of council, just want to say thank you for bringing this community together, for what you're doing for this community. And I know some of you have been doing this for a long time. So thank you, Rachel's mum, for what you've done over a long period of time. And thank you, Rachel, for picking up the baton.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Thank you, councillors.
Whawhatai tere lava.
Okay, we're now going to, we'll go to Deborah Fisher. Oh, Deborah, you're right, okay. Yeah, you're right, we won't start the clock till you're ready. Just make yourself comfortable and let us know when you're ready, Deborah. You're fine. And Jeff, we'll take you next, so if you can prepare yourself. Jeff's not here. Jeff. Yep. Okay, Deborah, just gather yourself. There's no rush to start. So, Deborah, you've got 4 minutes from once you're ready to start.
Yep.
The clock's down in the bottom right-hand corner, and that 4 minutes includes questions.
Residents have been told that the proposed rates increase are not due to growth, but rather a deficit in the city's everyday expenses. Growth is debt funded, so is not responsible for the required increase. Along with other expensive projects that are also debt funded, loans, even interest-free ones, require repayment. Along with everyday expenses like rubbish, parks, potholes and repairs, are allowances for growth in the operating expenses, everyday costs budget, that is rates funded. Future growth and development does contribute to the proposed increase, and you have chosen the most expensive option. How many of those people who tick Peacock as the next major growth cell thought it was an either-or choice? Due to current planning, council is contractually committed to provide at least some infrastructure at Rotokauri. Question should have been asked, do we provide infrastructure at Rotokauri only or both? A majority of the current residents and businesses of Hamilton cannot afford the sort of increase you want. You could, if you choose to, downsize and or defer many of the wants currently included in the budget and reduce the amount of extra income you expect Hamiltonians to provide. Your priority shouldn't be growth at all costs, because if you listen hard enough, you will hear people screaming that the cost is too high. The public have also yelled long and hard on Garden Place, and I only hope you are listening when you make your final decision. Not ticking a box does not mean support. Options 1 to 6 all assume an agreement with the increase sought. I do not agree with any option. I point out I did not take an opposition to the regional theatre while my submission shows I have concerns. I am not necessarily a supporter, but rather open to more discussion on this. But I do feel the public have been left out of much of the decision-making process regarding things like location. What I am sure about is that we should be protecting our heritage. And there are at least 4 heritage buildings being very casually discussed, 2 or 3 of which will be demolished. And while Founders Theatre may not be technically old enough to qualify, many believe it is heritage worth preserving along with the municipal pools. You have a very difficult job ahead of you, and your decisions will impact on every area of the city, from homeowners to landlords, tenants, businesses, the economy, and the livability of Hamilton. I remind you that the purpose of local government is to enable democratic local decision-making and action by and on behalf of communities, and to meet the current and future needs of communities for good quality local infrastructure, local public services and performance of regulatory functions in a way that is most cost effective to households and businesses. This budget is not the most cost effective option. Try harder. Please listen to the people that elected you. They are counting on you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillor Deputy Mayor Martin.
No.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Deborah, for your submission. You talked at one stage. You talked about wants versus needs. I think. What wants would you and you're trying to reduce the rates increase, what sort of what wants would you be happy to see cut?
I think the universal one is Garden Place, not to mention the inner city, Central City Park. But the size of growth that you're planning is a want as well. Downsize it, because it does affect what's going on. It does have impacts, and it is making a difference, the amount of growth and the size of growth that you're actually proposing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, for your submission.
Thanks.
Jeff, are you okay to wait, or do you want to submit now? If you okay to wait? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Chris Rollett. Thank you, Chris. So you're submitting for the Hamilton East Community Trust?
Correct.
And you're also, you've got your own personal submission as well?
Got a personal one, it's a rant that'll follow on the back of it.
Okay, so you have 9 minutes for the Hamilton East Community Trust plus 4 minutes. So 13 minutes total. The clock's up here on the bottom right-hand corner, which says 9 at the moment. I'll change it to 13 once you start speaking, and it'll count down. And that 13 minutes includes questions.
That's
We'll
fine.
take all the questions.
I'll be as brief as I possibly can.
Yeah, we'll take all the questions at the end, and if you can just have a definition between where the trust finishes and where your personal submission starts, so that we're aware of the change.
So you want me the 13 minutes to do both submissions, bang, bang?
Yeah,
Read them both?
including questions. So any time at the end will be open for questioning. Thank you.
Okay. Right, this is the Hamilton East Community Trust. It was formed in 2005 and was previously the Steel Bark Working Group. We've been active in Hamilton East. We've run 6 successive heritage festivals on Steel Park. We've submitted on many issues concerning Hamilton East. We developed a streetscape plan for Hamilton East and worked to preserve the heritage in Hamilton East, which is a key component of the area. A lot of work went into the Safer Streets initiative, along with the Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan. We're encouraging a far more holistic approach to our design and planning for the Hamilton East area, an approach that incorporates urban design, traffic, alternate traffic options, infill housing, heritage, and above all, the needs of our community. These are the elements of the long-term plan we wish to highlight. Firstly, the river plan, Wellington Street Beach. We don't support the idea of a floating pontoon at Wellington Street Beach and believe it should be kept as it is and enjoyed for many decades. We do support planting of more trees for shade and erosion control. It is a hugely popular natural feature in Hamilton East, should be maintained but not changed. But we need far more connectivity from Hamilton East onto the river pathways. It's the best side of the river for enhancement, as it gets the sun all day, whereas on the CBD side, it doesn't get the afternoon sun. The Victoria Park extension. We don't support this project for several reasons. At least 2 of the buildings on the demolish list are listed buildings. We've lost a great majority of our heritage already, so why is the council funding very expensive projects like this? And most people are facing significant rate increases. We support a stronger focus on development of the river pathways and encouraging their use as a corridor linking the city from end to end. And we don't support the Garden Place revamp either. The version seems to get worse, not better. We don't need cars there, and why spend millions on an unsupported project in the wake of large rate increases? We do celebrate the new playground at Steel Park. We support the planned destination playground in Hillcrest that is badly needed, but there needs to be activity for teens as well. The playgrounds are great until a child is 12 years old, and then there's not much to attract a young person's attention. Skate parks, youth activity areas need to be developed in conjunction with the playground areas, and they need to be maintained in a far more robust manner than is currently being done. I note with interest there has been a large amount of support for this in the submissions put forward. On to Steel Park, and the sports pavilion and toilets badly need attention. At present, some men are looking out the toilet window onto the playground and behaving inappropriately. People are using the baby change room to sniff glue and have sex. More seating in the park would also be needed. The urban design panel. And we wholeheartedly support this. We'd like to see more teeth given to this so the improvements and changes made by the design panel are mandatory and not just suggestions. The city would be better for it, more sustainable and much more attractive. Our Hamilton East streetscape. This was developed some time ago but has not been acted upon. We would like to see some more funding put towards this, and the revised transit model that certainly made inroads into this, but we're yet to see any activity going forward. Our Heritage Fund, we wholeheartedly support this, and we ask the fund be increased from the $100,000 that it is at present. Infill housing. We've seen the negative effect of this we predicted some years ago. There's been a big increase in parking congestion, noise, loss of amenity value for existing residents, rubbish and litter. And while the idea of infill housing is appealing as a way of reducing urban sprawl and getting higher utilisation from existing infrastructure, it needs to be carefully balanced. Over-intensification and unregulated infill housing has the potential to create slums. And Cameron Road is an example of a risk area from infill housing being poorly planned. And finally, transport. Our cycleways in particular. There needs to be more cycleways in the city, especially on the school, tertiary education routes. There should be a cycleway following the railway line from the university into town. Hamilton is a flat city and should be an ideal prospect for innovative transport initiatives. A cycleway from the university to the CBD would be a great boon if the route were carefully planned and could facilitate a reduction in automobile traffic and greatly reduce parking pressure. There can only be benefits from encouraging more activity from residents, from health and general well-being to less congestion and pollution. Ausroads and NZTA ran a series of workshops and consultations where some strong ideas were put forward, not only to reduce risk to people, but to enhance the area as well. We would like to encourage this to be implemented as soon as possible. The link between the CBD and the Hamilton Gardens also needs to be encouraged and enhanced. The underpass at the end of Grey Street is a good example of this, but there is little in the way of signage to encourage or inform any visitor to the museum, for example, that there is a walkway to the Hamilton Gardens along the river. We urge the Council to take a far more inclusive approach rather than the crumbs to keep them happy one that we seem to be enduring. Finally, we do not support the $10 charge to the Hamilton Gardens. Hamilton City is not blessed with a lot of tourism draw cards, and Hamilton Gardens is the shining light in what we do have. Charge for parking, increase the profile of voluntary donation opportunities, but keep it free. We need to encourage visitors and not to put barriers up. Hamilton East is a fantastic village to live and work and raise a family in, and a great example of a true community, diverse, rich in history, with a strong sense of identity. We wish to enhance this and not have our community marginalised by poorly thought out planning decisions. That's the end of the Hamilton East Community Trust submission.
Okay, go on with your personal submission and then we'll take questions.
Right.
Thank you.
The tone of this one's a little bit different, but I don't apologise for that in any way, shape or form. Okay. So this is me, right from the heart. I applaud the Council for recognising the need to stop borrowing to pay debt, and am relieved that there are strategies to stop our city losing money every year. However, it's hard then to reconcile the proposed 10-year plan as anything more than a continuation of the practices that got us into the debt cycle in the first place. The Central City Park, I'm totally against. Council money, our money, being used for this folly. And as for the Waikato Regional Theatre, it's not a regional facility, it's a Hamilton facility, and we can't afford it at this point in time. If it's such an absolute winner of an idea, why is it not 100% private funded? Because we will end up be left holding the baby again, exactly like the Claudelands Event Centre. Garden Place has received an overwhelming no from ratepayers as to having any further money spent on it. It's fine the way it is, it just needs to be utilised better. And our city is becoming harder and harder to get around. and yet we are doing little to enhance the connections of the key areas by alternative forms of transport. Cycle links between the university schools and residential areas are at best piecemeal. I'm a keen and active cyclist, but I won't cycle down Clyde Street. I'm just not that brave. We need safer or better linkage, safer transit utes so parents can confidently let their kids cycle and scooter to schools. This alone will have a drastic effect on the morning congestion. I'm seeing less and less being spent on maintenance in our city. Steel Park's pavilion is an absolute disgrace. Leaking roof, rotten floor, and one PowerPoint that works in the whole building. The toilets are just as sketchy, and when the facilities are not well looked after, they attract bad behaviour, which is happening now. Another example is the river pathway at the end of London Street. It's been closed for over a year. There are plenty of homeless people sleeping down there, so it's obviously not that unsafe. I've been through there in the morning, jumped over the fence and ran through there, and seen them all sleeping rough there. The thrust of my submission is to stop making the great big plans that will cost us a fortune going forward and fix the stuff we have, maintain it properly and not put our rates up. Good councils look after their residents. Listen to them. Be a good council.
So, Chris, just before we take questions, the building we own with one PowerPoint working and a rotten floor, which building was that?
The Steel Park Pavilion.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Henry.
Mr Mayor, and thank you so much, Chris. Love your honesty and straightforwardness. You said in your previous one, with the Heritage Fund, you said you would like to have it go up past 100,000.
Yes.
Have you got any number in your mind?
Well, that's for you guys to figure out what you can and can't afford, obviously, but I think we're not putting enough value on the heritage aspect of Hamilton City.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, makes sense.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. You said you don't. This is going back to your Hamilton East community that you didn't want the $10 fee charge for the gardens. Would that suggest that people don't think it's worth $10?
Not at all, Gary, but it's something we've all paid for anyway, and I don't think we should be putting barriers up for people coming to visit the attractions of our city. I think there are other ways to monetise it, and we need to be smarter with it rather than putting up a barrier to entry.
So you're happy with the continued with the rate funding?
I think, well, we've already got that in the plan, haven't we?
Yep, no, we have, that's right.
Yep.
Correct.
Councillor Paula, one question, please.
Thank you. Hello, Chris. Just interested in the Wellington Street beach area. I understand you want the planting and the path to be better connected because of the extreme erosion there. Have you got any comment on the jetty itself? I'm not talking about a massive revamp, but it's very rotten, isn't it, that wooden jetty?
I think it really highlights the aspects of both my submissions that we're not spending enough on maintenance of our existing facilities. That I can't think of when I've ever seen a new board on that jetty. It's been there for, I don't know what its life is, 20, 25 years, and it's had nothing spent on it. It's had 1 million people jump off it and really, really enjoy it, but nothing spent on it.
Thank you.
Okay, just for the record on that one, Councillor Paula, that has had work done on it very, very recently in the last few months. So, no, it's had a lot of repairs done on it. I've been involved in it, so just to let you know, over the last few months, it has been fully brought up to code. So, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
The design panel, I note your points. Would the Hamilton East Community Trust see the design panel having a bit of a role to encourage doing up of heritage type buildings? I mean, obviously we've lost a lot, as you know, but trying to.
Oh, I think they're integral not only with the preservation of heritage buildings, but also the design of new facilities going through to make sure that we don't have an ad hoc approach to planning, which we have enjoyed.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. So we've now got Steve Lipon from Waikato Softball. So Steve, you have 9 minutes. The clock is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, so you can keep an eye on it as you go, and the 9 minutes includes question time.
Thank you. Greetings and thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of Waikato Softball Association. We're the regional sporting organisation for softball and are affiliated to Softball NZ. With 75 teams and a player base of 800 that play at Rest Hills Park, we have teams from Huntly through to Otorohanga participating in our competitions, as well as a combined men's competition with counties. Rest Hills has been the home of softball for many years, and we are well established and an increasing softball program. We share Rest Hills with Hamilton Raiders Baseball and Waikato Rugby League. We have collaborative relationships with these organisations, though collectively we feel the constraints of sharing the same resource. Rest Hills Park is below standard, both in terms of the quality of the fields and the facilities block. Rest Hills has long been neglected, and we've often received the default response, "There's no budget for this," a rhetoric known too well by Waikato Softball and Rugby League, as we've sought upgrade of the facilities and referred to the substandard drainage in the area for many years. The fields issues are the high water table and extremely poor drainage, uneven ground and potholes that are hazards to players, and the low spots poor water. With more frequent and extreme weather events, the problems are exacerbated. The state of the park is one of the reasons baseball is looking to relocate. Issues with the facilities include the toilets do not flush properly to clear the toilet, thus requiring manual intervention. Not an envious task while hosting tournaments, I can tell you. The changing rooms and showers block is dark and dingy with limited water pressure and is below standard for a community facility. Players are reluctant to use the showers, and the building is a regular target of break-ins and vandalism. It's a long trek for a young 5-year-old player from the bottom field to use the toilets on the top field. Also, when the gates are closed, with the number of visitors the park gets, the most logical place for public toilets is beside the bottom car park. This may also reduce the level of vandalism on the changing room shower block. Storage. Inadequate storage limits our ability to invest in and secure equipment to support game growth and development. We have requested the ability to store equipment in a container in the past, but council policy prevents this. Use of containers is a cost-effective solution, and if suitably worked into the environment, will not create an eyesore. Kitchen and bar. We are a completely voluntary organisation. We do not have paid roles. We want to be able to focus on running and growing softball and complement the game experience with access to the bar and kitchen with use of specialised service providers. Council policy does not allow us to engage a service provider, but is quite happy to do this at FMG Stadium, Claudelands and Seddon Park. We also would prefer to utilise trained service professionals rather than burden a limited volunteer base with ever-increasing compliance-related activities. All-year softball space. Softball, like other sports, is no longer limited to a 6-month time slot. To enable development of our players and coaches, we require access to facilities all year round. Ultimately, we have aspirations of 2 more permanent diamonds with artificial turf and lighting to allow games to be played into early evenings. To progress these, we need the fields and facilities at a level to warrant the investment. Since making our submission, we have received correspondence from Softball NZ supporting our position to Council. The letter refers to the strategic relationship softball has with us and confirmation of Rest Hills as one of the few softball-specific grounds in the northern region able to host national tournaments. We've been allocated the New Zealand Under-18 Girls National Champs tournament for January in 2019 as a pinnacle event for athlete selection for the Under-19 World Championships later that year. So what do we want to happen? Investment in improved drainage and levelling of the uneven areas of the park to improve safety and playing surfaces. Investment in the toilets and shower block so it's functional and of a suitable standard for a public facility. Installation of public toilets beside the car park on the bottom field. amend policy to allow use of containers for storage, amend policy to allow use of service providers to support bar and food services, and dedicate the Diamond 3 and 4 area to softball, subject to drainage improvements to allow use all year round. That concludes our verbal submission. We appreciate the opportunity to submit and consideration of the points made.
Thank you. I'll just take one question from each member. We have several here, so Councillor Robb.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Steve, for your presentation this morning. In your submission, you talk about upgrade and then talk about maintenance. Have you separated out what council perhaps hasn't delivered in terms of maintenance versus what your needs or wants might be in terms of an upgrade or upgrades?
I guess upgrades in terms of a functional and operating facility, when you're having to manually help the toilet operate, it's not a space that I think either the council or us hosting tournaments want to be in.
So that's a maintenance issue?
Well,
in terms of toilets not flushing and so forth?
I suspect the toilets are beyond the usable life and need an upgrade.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Steve. How long have these issues been going on in terms of that you're talking about?
I've been chair of the Softball Association for 2 years, and I know that issues have been raised preceding my time. So I couldn't give you a definite answer on when these have first been raised, but I understand it's been a historical issue.
Thank you.
So just for members, the 10-year plan in year 2 and 3 does include an upgrade of those toilets. So it is in this 10-year plan if it gets through pre the next 10-year plan, which means it should get done. So that part of the submission, but just for information. Councillor Dave.
Depend on the date of their championships though, wouldn't it? As to whether that's in the right year, what you've just said.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's in year 2 to 3, so is where it is at the moment.
So my question, Steve, was under what circumstances or by whom were you told that it wasn't possible to have a catering service provider come in to run that part of your activities or events?
The arrangement at Rest Hills is that the club rooms itself are half owned by ourselves and half owned by Waikato Rugby League, and we've set up an entity, Rest Hills, that helps manage that facility on our behalf. It's through the liaison with Rest Hills and the lease, a 15-year lease agreement, that it's clear in there that that's not possible currently.
Okay, so that's something you had agreed to, or your entity had agreed to?
Yes, I guess a historical position, yes, but I guess we're asking for review of that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Gary, last question.
Submission. Is the issue that you're requiring volunteers to run the bar, and you think it'd be more efficient to have someone else run the bar and catering, beg your pardon?
Yes, I guess just on the basis that with ever increasing compliance requirements, we're asking people to sit bar licences and all the administration that goes
before you can buy booze and that sort of stuff.
Yes. Our preference would be for us to be able to focus on running the game and let people that specialise in that space offer those services for us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
John Walker. So, John, you have 4 minutes. You're presenting as an individual.
Yes, I am.
So the 4 minutes is in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and that will count down, and that includes questions.
Okay. Good morning, Your Honour, the Mayor and councillors. I'm going to just go through the questions the way it's laid out in the consultation process. So, question 1, I've marked option 6, so long as it complies with what I printed out on that form for the next 3 years, which I would agree to. question 2 is endeavour to keep the rates within the rate of inflation. Simple. If things keep going up and up, no one is any better off. Question 3, you can read what my ideas are for yourself. Question 4, option 2, Rotakari in the northwest of the city is my idea, which leads on to question 5. And I suggest that Rotakari is closer to the base and also to the industrial and retail areas of Te Rapa and the north end of the city, which this would facilitate in a lot of people having less commuting time to get to work, because a lot of people would work in those light industry areas of North Te Rapa and the base, therefore not having traffic moving from the south end of the city up to the north. Question 6, do you think the investment of 251 million in transport improvement is a right? Yes. Do you have, question 7, do you have any specific transport projects you think the council should consider? I suggest having photographs about the city and what one can do within the city on the buses. You've got a good option there, but I don't see any advertising on the buses at present. That cost should be paid back in many ways. Question 8. Now, I have some detail here, and I'd like to go through each of them quickly. The river plan, I would slash the costs down to 4 million. I don't see the point in doing too much along the river plan, opening up or making available more spaces for more shops or for more restaurants or bars, because I think that the city, especially the south end of Victoria Street, a lot of the places are wanting more customers, and I think we have enough there for the next 10 years. So I put 4 million down for that. Garden Place, I delete that. There's been too many, I think, updates of Garden Place. Another 40 car park spaces won't make that much difference. Indoor facilities, delete that. There's enough gyms in the city people can go to, and we aren't using Claudeland's facilities enough. Rotatuna community, agree with having a library, but why have rooms for people? If people want rooms, then they can hire halls or other places like we do in Glenview or anywhere else. Proposed Waikato Regional Theatre. Yes, good idea. The city needs one, but make sure it doesn't go over budget. Waiwhakariki National Park. Yes, that's a good idea to link the zoo with the park. Question 9. Yes, agree with the master plan of 15.2 million. Yes, that's fine. Skate park. No, I don't believe that. River plan projects. Slash that down to 10 million. We don't want, I don't think we need a footbridge away from Wellington Street Bridge.
So, and John, time's up, so could you just wrap it up there?
Okay.
If there's any other points that
yes.
are really pushing?
In summing up, what my savings are amounting to 52.8 million savings. In summing up, I would like to just stress, how can the public make a proper comments on proposed projects which rely on the future consultation process, which staff have not given the reasons of any costings or proper costings or locations with some detail of the referring to the Reserves Act management plans of 1977. This is a statutory requirement to assist the public to participate in more detailed developments of the city. And you have a whole page of my question 12. Thank you for letting me submit.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your presentation.
Good.
Okay, so we'll have one more presentation before we stop for morning tea, and that'll be Jeff Krieger. Jeff, you're presenting on 2 items. You're presenting on the rating and on the 10-year plan. So that's 4 minutes for each one, which is a total of 8 minutes. The 8 minutes will be on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and that'll count down. I'm happy for you to mix and match however you like, but the 8 minutes does include question time. Thank you.
The stated reason for the rating review is that growth is higher than expected. What was the expectation? 0? Page 41 of the 10-year plan has ratepayer growth at an average of 2.46% per annum. So presumably the population growth is similar, giving an average of 4,500 per year. The Waikato University 2016 update on population has annualised population growth over the period 2013 to 2031 of 1.59% per year, giving an average of 2,800 per year. One of the reasons given for the move to capital value faster is better alignment with household income and ability to pay. A Julie Hardacre contention, it is bollocks. It takes no account of those older ratepayers who are asset rich but cash poor, many on fixed incomes. Rates represent the majority of revenue and is calculated on capital value. It begs the question, what is the relevance of the CV of a property and the services received? The Gallagher and Ridgedale properties are prime examples. A paradigm shift is needed. A community charge, a people's tax, is a fair council revenue system. Fairer, user pays, each person pays their own way. The community charge is a local tax to pay for local services. It should be by person rather than by value of your property. If there are 5 people living in one house, they use more public services than a couple. Rates on the capital value of property are the politics of envy, not common sense. Council can increase its revenue by disposing of loss-making liabilities. Claudelands, FMG Stadium, the Zoo, Seddon Park, all are professed to attract people to Hamilton to spend on accommodation, bars and restaurants. They make substantial losses. They are effectively subsidising local business. The 10-year plan. In May 2014, 2 astute ratepayers submitted to Council, identifying the same financial issues as Council is attempting to portray to ratepayers. Council sat on their hands, did nothing, despite being made aware of the issues. There were 4 other submitters that expressed concern of rates, financial issues. The last time that rates covered the running of the city was 2007, and this was mentioned in plans since 2014. Actions speak louder than words. The current 10-year plan states over the past 5 years, on average, we have borrowed $10 million per year to cover everyday costs. Have you been asleep at the wheel? There are to be no service cuts, but savings of $55 million over 10 years through innovation and changing the way we work. Really? The result of increasing rates is the balance sheet will be in a stronger position and we will be able to borrow more. That statement is quite frightening. When debt is to rise to $760 million in 2023, 5 years' time, incurring interest of $68 million. Current staff remuneration is nearly $74 million, and it is to increase to almost $106 million, a $32 million increase. The total cost, $932 million over 10 years, representing 40% of the rates take. Every year, Council will spend $6 to $9 million on consultants, a total of $71 million over 10 years. In summary, over 10 years, rates will equal $2.5 billion. Rates penalties, $13 million. You have to ask why. Personnel, $1 billion. And you want to put a train on top of that. Like a smuggler, Council is the only honest thief.
Councillor Jeff.
Jeff, you mentioned disposing of Claudelands and FMG Stadium and the zoo. I mean, how would you go about disposing of FMG Stadium? Who would you sell it to? And
well, there's a number of options there, and if you have a look at Taronga, Bob Clarkson actually built a stadium with his own money, nothing to do with the council, and made a profit. So the point is there. And the thing is, with things like the Waikato Stadium, as opposed to other stadiums, you've got to have a helicopter to change the goalpost because you're not allowed on the turf.
right, can I just ask? So, you mentioned here that you feel FMG Stadium is subsidising business. Isn't it also giving people a nice place to go and watch the rugby?
Oh, it is, without a doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you rather not have it at all and go back?
No,
to
I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying, but it cost us $3 million a year. Those four things I mentioned, $18 million a year. And sure, they're nice, but it's costing us money.
Yep,
and you're telling us that we borrowed $10 million a year for 5 years.
These things do cost money.
Hang on, Jeff, excuse me, you're getting into opinion, sorry. Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Acknowledging, we by law can't say, you talk about community charge, being a fairer way. By law, we can't do that. The only thing we could do is, uniform annual charge. Given the fact that between capital value and land value we have the unusual situation, some might say unfair, where you have two properties, one property is worth more than the next door neighbour or down the road, but because that's expressed in a bit of land, the overall value is more, the land value probably gets to pay more than the capital value in a number of cases. And I'm just wondering your view of it, within the rating system, with the constraints of law, what do you think is fairest under the current rating system that we're allowed to do, uniform annual charge, user pay, whatever?
You're on the right track with uniform annual charge. People will accuse the council of subsidising the higher value property. But you have a look at that example that I gave between Ridgedale and Gallagher's. Gallagher's is paying as much a week in rates as that Ridgedale property pays in a year.
I don't know the property you're alluding to.
Well, it was in my submission.
No, yeah, I'll have to look it up. I have no knowledge of the Gallaghers, but thank you. No, the point's made. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your submission. Okay, we'll break now for morning tea until 11:20. Thank you. Okay, we'll get started again. Okay, before we start, I'd just make a public... Before we start, I'll just make a public apology to both Chris Rollett and Councillor Paula Southgate. The jetty in Hamilton East hasn't been repaired. It is in the work program, but the work hasn't been done yet. So I apologise, Councillor Paula, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. And yeah, maybe staff can get hold of Chris and just pass on that apology too, please. That'd be appreciated. Thank you. So we now move on to Dr. Alison Campbell. Dr. Ellison, you're submitting as an individual? Yes, I am. Okay, so it's 4 minutes. The clock's up in the top right, bottom right-hand corner, and it includes questions.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to speak in person. I think one of my major concerns in making a submission as an individual is that we need to be living within our means as a city, in the same way that ratepayers are expected to. And that we need to ensure that any proposed rate increases are not going to be beyond the means of those ratepayers who are in straitened circumstances, people who are retired, people who may be on a benefit, people who are at the lower end of the income spectrum. We need to see evidence that the Council's plans for the city are future focused and where the introduction of new items is very well balanced against the need to account for deferred maintenance around the city and to renew assets which we already have, which are a demonstrable public good. We need to ensure that council behaves, as I've said, in the same way as most ratepayers would, not splashing out on expensive new or luxury goods. And I think Hamilton City Council, to show it's a responsible council and responsible councillors, need to be taking the same approach. Now, that really does mean that proposals to spend large on new items, such as the revamp again to Garden Place, the new proposed Central City Park, the new proposed Central City Theatre, for which I will note that Hamilton ratepayers will be asked to pay again through the levy to the Waikato Regional Council. Those things should all be on the back burner while we focus on doing the core things. We need to consider the needs of communities around the city because, let's face it, communities are where most of us spend our time, most of our time. Now that means ensuring that the basic infrastructure in the city is up to scratch, that it's renewed when necessary, that things like libraries, which are a public good, demonstrably so, parks, pathways, roadways, water are there. We need to think very carefully about growth, and this is my final point. There's been a lot said in the plan around growth, but untrammelled growth is bad for both the built and the natural environment. In that respect, and bearing in mind that we are a signatory to Agenda 21, we need to minimise builds over productive farmland when we consider the city's expansion. New Zealand does need as a whole to retain as much of that as possible to ensure our future food security. Only 5% of our farmland, of our land, is actually productive. We need to ensure the existing and future needs of communities are met, and we need to move beyond the Hamiltonians love their cars mindset towards planning and pushing and educating our city, our ratepayers, towards more sustainable movements for mass movement, individual transport around the city, and to ensure that we have a livable, sustainable city into the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Paula.
Quick question, in looking after existing assets, not the big new ticket items, would you see some smaller elements of those projects still being worthy? So, for example, not all of Garden Place, but maybe something to the front of the library, or not all of the Central City Park, but maybe some aspect of it? Or do you think that we should put the whole deal on hold?
Personally, I think we should put the whole deal on hold. In response to Garden Place, I think that's been re-engineered at least 3 times, and at this point in time I would say we were throwing good money after bad. You did mention the library, and we're told we need to draw people into town. I believe the public library in town, while open, brought in something like 70,000 foot movements over a year, just of people coming into the library itself. Opening the library up to the square might be possible, but let's just leave Garden Place rejigged off there for the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, last question, just one question. Councillor Gary, just before we go there, can I just remind members not to be suggestive of projects that they are keen on to basically test presenters on when presenters didn't bring up that subject in the first place. So just, this is presenters' time to talk to us, not for us to be suggestive back to them. Councillor Gary, just one question, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Alison. I wonder if you'd expand on not untrammelled growth against the scenario of a housing shortage.
I think there are alternatives to spreading endlessly over farmland or productive land.
Spreading what, sorry?
I think there are alternatives in terms of housing shortages to endlessly spreading out over productive land, and I think we should be investigating other possibilities. Having just got back from both Singapore and Japan, they manage by intensifying within the city boundaries rather than pushing ever outwards. And given that a large amount of New Zealand's productive land is actually around its cities, as we're seeing with Pukekohe currently being built over, I think that is something we need to seriously examine before we move further in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Kelly Pike. So, Kelly, just get yourself comfortable, take your time, there's no rush. When you are ready to start, and once you start, the clock will tick down from 4 minutes, and that includes questions. But there's no rush, just organise yourself first. Just don't touch it, Kelly. It'll be controlled from over here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's my first submission. I'm actually nervous but excited. So you can see on this. No, you can't see on the screen. Yes, you can. Of all of those 9 plus your bonus option, I chose one that I wanted to go ahead. This is a priority for me, the Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park. That development is priority because of its long-term benefits for us. And also in that respect, my least favourite there is the Central City Park, and I'm actually very much against that one. This is my 6-year-old daughter Ella, and this is what we keep in mind when we consider what it is that we should be doing and the decisions that we should be making. So as I think you've got a handout from me, and I've put some of the projects that I've been following what they do. We've got Restore, Waiwhakariki Gully Management Programs. I'd like to see a lot more of that, and improving water quality of our lake and of course our river. This is in flood last year, and I think that's something we need to be mindful of, is the fact that we don't have control over everything, and we should have money put aside for things like this that are outside of our control, but we can do things to minimise the damage and risks. As I mentioned, the Central City Park is my least favourite of all options because it's going to cost us a lot more than we're being told. It says 12.8 million in that document, and we all know that's not true. We've heard it was about 30 million in December, but possibly a lot more, possibly up to 75 million, and that's what scares me. I don't understand the point of that. I prefer, we went back to the river plan, so I've said I'm for Waiwhakariki, I'm against the Central City Park, and what I would like to focus on is the river plan, which embraces the museum and arts post area. This is Wellington Beach. Some of you may know it. I have to admit I would never go swimming in there, but I definitely want to see the facilities put in there, which were included in the river plan, which had lots of community discussion, lots of community buy-in, and I think that was really important and something that we have missed with our Central City Park. That's me giving you the thumbs up for the work that you do, but also because I just want you to know that my priority is the environment, and it's making sure we're not spending money unnecessarily on a concrete block, which is terracing for people who have lunch beside the river. A real connection with the river is being at the river, walking along the gravel, perhaps swimming in it, and of course recreation. That's me.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
For your submission and your point on the aspects of the river plan. If I looked, and I hope I'm not misquoting you, you've ticked a whole lot of projects that the council shouldn't do.
The one I'm against is the Central City Park.
Yeah.
The other ones, I don't really care either way, but I definitely don't think we need to spend 70 million at this point in time on those extra projects.
If I can be a bit leading, because obviously the photo of your lovely daughter,
yep,
and thinking the city she grows up and leads, would you not say, and I hope there's not a leading question, that something like a regional theatre that replaces the Founders Theatre and playground development, gardens, or
Excuse me,
hub.
Deputy Mayor.
So I'm just wondering
Just
just
be
how
careful where
opposed
you're
you
going,
are.
please.
I'm happy to answer that, and I think I know where he is going. Yes, I understand that playgrounds are really important, theatres are really important, but as I was saying, in terms of the long-term benefit and in terms of, not to sound doomsdayish, but survival, I think we need to protect the environment, and I think that should always be priority over those sorts of facilities. And there is a lot of recreation in our gullies. We don't need fancy playgrounds. We need to look after our gullies and walkways.
So you're talking about key choices, basically.
This is just another choice, and we as a family prefer Hammond Park or Taitua than we do destination playgrounds.
Okay.
It's not really our thing.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, we now have Robert Braga and Judy Braga, who are making 2 back-to-back submissions. So I'll let either of you. So that will be 8 minutes total, and I'll let you mix those submissions up in whichever way you see fit.
I'm sorry, we're told we only had 4 minutes, so we've
Well,
rearranged our other thing.
No, that's okay. There's 2 of you together, and you both made submissions, so I'm comfortable to take you both as a double submission together. Yeah. But one of you can submit for the whole 8 minutes. You're submitting together on 2 submissions.
Thank you.
So the clock is in the bottom right-hand corner. That'll count down from 8 minutes. So just.
I was going to talk about the SUIP or whatever they've decided to add on to our rates. Our rates have climbed tremendously because we've had 2 UA, or we will have next year 2 UAGCs. So that inspired me to read the Rating Act, and it seems to me that we don't owe us extra SUIP. While we've got 2 dwellings on our 2 houses on our section, the Act says that they don't. They're a single rating unit. But anyway, we'll move on to the 10-year plan. And goodness knows what I put in my submission, because I was shocked at the deceit and manipulation in this document. This plan is designed to confuse and bamboozle. Everyone's so busy trying to choose between non-choices and choose their pet projects at the end that they fail to notice the intention to increase the debt to $760 million in 2023. The role of the elected council is to represent the interest of the ratepayers, and to do that they need information in a clear, concise and easy to understand form, and this plan is certainly not it. I would like to urge, in fact implore, the councillors to stay with the 2015 plan. The whole ambition of the 2018 plan is to increase total debt to $760 million. This is sheer madness. It leaves no headroom at all for any unexpected events. I have the slides. If you line up the two pie charts from the 2015 and the 2018 plan, there isn't actually that much difference. The 2015 plan is going to spend $2 billion over 10 years. 2018, 2.1. The 2015 plan has twice as much money for transport. It's quite a bit of planning and development and economic development. I can't decide whether that's good or not. Safety's much the same. The major difference really is in the stormwater, water supply and sewage, where the 2015 plan is about $157 million less than the 2018 plan. The thing that stands out for me in the 2018 plan is this huge visitor attraction, venues, tourism and major events. And I think it is good to attract visitors and sporting events and major events in the city, but we need a change in culture at the council. It's too easy to spend other people's money. I mean, 25 million, that's a sixth of an annual return of rates, just to give to a theatre we don't own, plus another 1 point something million to maintain a theatre we don't own. And for example, the stadium is a cost to the council. Why on earth are we letting the HSBC World Rugby Sevens have it for no rent? HSBC, the sponsor, is the largest bank in Europe. It had a profit of $17.7 billion recently. World Rugby is a bit smaller. Their profit was only £180 million sterling. I can't understand why we're giving rent free. So back to the plan. I didn't get past page 10 really, the start, because there's an opening statement that suggests that the staff who set the budget for the year can't stick to the budget. I didn't quite understand that. So I looked up in the annual financial report, the cost of the salaries is 71 million. Really? Really? 71 million? For a council or whatever, the total income's less than 300 million. The city has 165,000 residents, 50,000 ratepayers. That's $1,412 per ratepayer. The personnel costs for the council represent 46% of the total rates for that year. The rates were 153.6 million, something like that, and 70% of the residential rates. It seems to me there's plenty of room in there for the CEO to find that missing 10 million. In these Trump days, it's time to clean out the swamp. The Mayor says we've been borrowing tens of billions of dollars just to run the city, although there's no evidence of that. In fact, the chart on the bottom of page 13 shows that the debt's decreasing in 2018, 16 and 17. He says that we need to reduce debt, but this 10-year plan is going to more than double today's debt. I know there's some no interest debt, but it's still got to be paid off. So, and then we come to the fact of the 3.8% and then the 9.5 to 9.5%. Well, 3.8% compounding over 5 years is 20%. Did any of you have a 20% increase? Even Richard Briggs' bonus wasn't 20% of his income, but it was about 400% of mine. The rates cannot continue to grow at a rate so much faster than the wages and other incomes are growing. The city either has to find some other source of income or has to severely cut its ambitions. How long do we go? We could have done the SUIP. Have I abused you enough?
Do your SUIP.
I didn't bring the SUIP. The SUIP's over by my desk. Just tell you.
Oh, we were misled.
We were misled.
That's all right.
Well,
No.
you start off with the sewer.
We're fairly upset to find two UAGs added to our. The latest letter from Mr Briggs says that our rates next year will go up 31%. They'd already gone up, they went up about 15% in the first 9 years that we were in Frankton, where we're living now, and then they went up 32%, I think, as I remember now.
48.
So our rates are now $4,692, which is not a very small amount. It's about 14.6 of 32,000, which is the income for a married couple, super. So anyway, I think we'll have to go and see the legal people about the sewer, because I don't think the two houses that are owned by the same people and used just for living in are actually can be seen as sewers.
Can we move on to questions?
Yeah, move on.
Go, Councillor
I've
Dove.
abused you enough.
Ask you, Bob and Judy, about that, the UAGC situation. Rent out the second house or anything like that?
No.
Daughter lives in it.
Yeah.
And she's there. Our old age plan was that she would look after us in our older age, and it's a family intergenerational concept.
Okay, because I believe we should put that on the list for later, because there is a way to handle that. Yeah.
So are they both houses on one title?
Yes, both houses on
It's
one
a large
side.
section, but it's got a very, very small building platform, and it's part of a gully that we've been involved in, the gully protection system. We've planted over 1,000 trees. We've done our bit for council, and I think David would remember that. So we just feel we're being penalised for planning. 20 years ago we sat down and planned out we'd like somewhere small to live in, living house platform, but it's by situation. We've got a large gully section, but it's all steep and covered in native bush.
Well, it was covered in jasmine,
Yeah.
morning glory,
No, the morning glory and the privet,
honeysuckle,
moss and the black.
your girls.
All right, well, thanks very much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you for allowing us to come and abuse you.
It's better than me anyway.
Okay, Laura Jones.
I don't think I've done a presentation since like first year management about 15 years ago. So bear with me.
So, Laura, the clock's on the bottom right-hand corner. You have 4 minutes from the time you start talking, and that includes questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm Laura Jones. I'm a homeowner in Hamilton South. I did a quick look through the Local Government Act to see what you guys are supposed to do for the community. So that was like network infrastructure, transport services, solid waste and disposal, natural hazards, libraries, reserves, other recreational facilities and community amenities. I find it quite hard getting details about projects at times. The website is... But often it seems like the council focuses on the last area more than the other 4. For instance, I don't really understand why you would spend $25,000 Glenview when Glenview's stormwater system is packing up. The ratepayers generally accept the need for increased rates to pay for infrastructure or maintaining the pools, but we're probably becoming quite resistant to a lot of the other ideas that are being thrown around. Okay, regarding the plan more specifically, I'm in favour of Rotokauri rather than peacocks, but I noticed yesterday actually that you guys are putting forward a special housing area to the government. Is this going to be factored into your final decision regarding which development area goes ahead? And does it also add to a case for housing investment fund for that area? I was also wondering, you don't have to answer this now, how Peacock stacks up against Rotokauri if you didn't have the HIF fund that's already been included. And is the intention to repay that within the 10 years, or is it going to start accruing interest afterwards? Question 8, I'm sure you've heard a lot about. I found it kind of poorly written and a bit confusing, but my summary of my thoughts are spend our rates on infrastructure and maintaining and upgrading what we've already got, rather than adding new projects if possible. For instance, upgrading the dog parks and existing playgrounds and improving drainage at the sports parks means people can better enjoy what's already there. Similarly, the Waiwhakariki Heritage Park and proposed zoo entrance expand on something the community has already shown good support for. The Central City Park, River Plan and Garden Place revamp, on the other hand, are more nice to haves in my family. Garden Place, for instance, just needs more usage rather than a new anything. Which brings me to the theatre. Now, it seems that founders partly fell victim to a lack of maintenance, and now we have to replace what is an existing amenity. I feel the council is correct in preferring a new build, so long as it is designed correctly for multiple purposes. I'm actually quite excited about Momentum's proposals. I read their latest one, and they seem to have capped the council's liability, therefore the ratepayers, and they're taking criticism on board. I don't see parking as a huge issue. There's lots of buildings around, and I quite like the idea of being out to the bar afterwards. It'd also be cool to see the if the university and the Polytech would do their graduations there and return the parade down the street, because that was pretty cool when I did it. I think Hamilton Gardens will continue to tick along if you drop your funding slightly. They're pretty good at adapting their timelines, and they seem to attract large donations on occasion. Just fun facilities like the toilets and whatnot, and please don't charge New Zealand visitors an entrance fee, because a lot of people have their family come and visit, for instance. International visitors, go for it. My friend is a resident of Rototuna, so she had a bit of opinion about the hub. She's pretty much uninterested in it, other than the pool, which she says would see a lot of use by families and probably the schools out there, especially with Waterworld having maintenance issues at the moment, though that's due to be fixed. The library network improvements would probably help. She goes to Chartwell anyway. So, to recap, concentrate on the Local Government Act obligations by returning infrastructure, etc., to acceptable levels of repair and upgrading our existing community amenities as required. Only then should you look at... yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Right on time.
Thanks.
Okay, Jamie, who are you presenting for?
Just on behalf of central government, really. Well, pretty much on behalf of myself.
Well, are you presenting for the Labour Party, or are you presenting for central government, or are you presenting for Jamie Strange yourself?
Shall we say Jamie Strange? We better be safe.
Okay, so this is Jamie Strange. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
You have 4 minutes. The time's on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and adding questions.
Right, 4 minutes including questions. Right. Yeah, look, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for the opportunity to be here today. Obviously, I'm the local Labour MP. Yeah, I just want to thank all the councillors, thank the mayor, thank the council staff for the work that you're doing. I certainly really appreciate it. Certainly appreciate your passion for the city. And I'm very keen for local and central government to work together. So hopefully that's come across in my first 6 months, and it's been one of my strong focuses, for us to work together to make our city a better place, and even work together on games of cricket, which we tried but didn't. Foiled by the weather. Yeah, just a couple of key points. The first one was around housing. So obviously this government have a strong focus around affordable housing, and I'd like to acknowledge the willingness of the mayor, council, and I see Richard over there. I'd just like to acknowledge the willingness of all of you to focus on that affordable housing aspect, because we do have a lot of housing challenges in our city. Very difficult for people to get into the market, for a variety of reasons. So certainly appreciate your willingness to look at potential solutions to that. The second one is around the regional theatre. So I personally support the theatre. I've been working with Momentum around a funding application to the government of 13 million. So I'll continue to advocate for that, to see what we can do in that space. I think a new theatre will help us as a city move to that next level in terms of continuing to grow up. I believe we'll be the second biggest city in New Zealand in about 30 years, and this is sort of another little step on the journey there. I'd like to acknowledge the work that's been done around rail, and like to continue working with you on rail. particularly Dave, in terms of the extensive work you've done, but also everyone as a whole. Thank you for your willingness there to support the rail between Hamilton and Auckland, the commuter rail, and so I'm keen to continue working with you on that. I do acknowledge some of the financial challenges that councils have in growth areas. I was talking to Phil Goff the other day and around some of their challenges up in Auckland. Obviously Tauranga, I was talking to the Deputy Mayor over there. So we've all got some of the challenges in this Golden Triangle, you know, so, and that does put pressure on rates. And so certainly very keen to talk through and work through models to fund growth. Yeah, and some central government involvement in that potentially, specifically around the UDA, the Urban Development Authority, which is a government agency which will be starting in about 12 months to help facilitate growth. So 1 minute 10 for questions, if anyone's got any.
Okay, just one question, Mayor.
Yes, thank you for your submission. Excellent to see a Member of Parliament here doing that. The issue of rating, and you raised the issue of the constraints and the Minister's looking at that. Are you lobbying hard to actually perhaps broaden the rates rebate scheme? Because we obviously have a real issue with lower income, you know, asset rich but cash poor, particularly in our elderly population.
Yeah, we are broadening the rates rebate scheme. We're extending it out to the licence to occupy, which previously wasn't available to people in that environment. Yeah.
Any budget announcements?
I wish I could.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Hi, Jamie. One question. $13 million potential application to government for the Waikato Regional Theatre. Would you envisage that going to the Momentum Trust portion of the cost of theatre, City Council, or a split between the two?
Well, my understanding is that the council looking at 30 as a Momentum 20, and I would think over and above that would be my understanding. But
so that
well, hang on, just be careful.
But maybe I don't understand.
Just be careful, you're not being trapped here, Jamie, without the member trying to do that. But that will be up to the Momentum's application as to how they word it. It's very clear that this council's job was to provide $30 million, including our councils around us, and Momentum had dibs at everybody else, that includes central government.
Okay, so that's
a resolution that's on the table.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So look, I wanted just to get some clarity about that. We've got a portion of the spend. Momentum's got a very generous portion of the spend. I just wanted to be quite clear before people got confused whether any additional money would go into the Momentum pot, all to the same project, or to the city pot. But I think the Mayor has...
The resolution... sorry,
the Mayor has answered.
Yeah, well, I've been working with Kelvin, but yeah, maybe you might have an answer.
So the council resolution, which is going back a year and a bit ago now, was that we'd be responsible and seek funding from the other councils as well as government as part of our contribution. So any application by Momentum on our behalf will come towards our $30 million contribution.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly the clarity I needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Richard.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Keep up the good work.
Samantha Rose. Okay, Samantha, I have you down as an individual.
Yes, I work for many organisations. I just thought I'll represent myself today.
Okay, so you have 4 minutes. The 4 minutes is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That includes questions.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I've come here with an overall statement that I believe that the 10-year plan, or any planning that's done by local government or government, should have a nature of participatory planning, and I do believe there was quite a bit of consultation as a community development professional with methods of participatory planning, and having just attended a conference on regenerative development and participatory planning, I do believe that there are tools that we could be using and processes that we could be using that engage community a little more actively in the process of getting people's ideas of what their community needs and what would be better for the whole rather than any individual, because I do believe some people make their decisions based on what is good for them or their own immediate family versus what is the whole, and a participatory process would allow that to unfold. Also, that would be focused on regenerative development, and that is development that is working in harmony with nature and that obviously creates a more of a regenerative rather than a deconstructive development, which I think in general Hamilton has a good ecological focus, but I think it could be a bit more. And along that lines, just a clear set of guidelines. When I looked over the 10-year submission, it wasn't clear to me what the ethics and principles are for the city. I saw there's a few focus areas, but for me, the guiding principles and ethics by which we base our decisions were not so clear to me. I'm clear about ethics and principles that I work with when I'm talking about regenerative development, using permaculture principles, for instance, or looking at sustainable development goals, which was the UN, and those are the kinds of things I thought would be important to outline when we're asking people to reflect on such important decisions that are going to make a difference for 10 years and longer. And regarding my points on the submission, just income, I had mentioned around water usage, that we could charge for water. Everywhere I've ever lived, I've paid for water, and I think that's a good way to make money. You have a basic basic allotment, and then after that there's a charge. And then I also believe charging for land that lies fallow. So if you don't use it, you either lose it or you pay dearly for it, because land is an asset that is actually belonging to the community. And if it's just lying fallow, then it's actually a negative asset for the community rather than a positive one. And therefore, people would be encouraged to do something on that land rather than it just sitting and gaining them personal financial advantage. And then for housing, I'm going to be meeting with some of you hopefully in the near future regarding something called a community land trust, which is a way of having permanently affordable housing. It isn't really a model that exists yet in New Zealand, but part of my work with Shama to be researching how we can do one here in Hamilton. And it is for permanently affordable housing, not just affordable in this moment in time. So that's really exciting. I would like you all to, if you can do a little bit of background research, so when I meet with you, you're ready to speak with me about that community land trust. And around transportation, I would like to see more biking and more public transport. But the fact that there's no bike racks on buses makes it quite difficult, I think, to be able to marry more people being able to provide for themselves in transport getting around. And just around any development public spaces, I'd like to see more, again, that regenerative development, more of these sustainable development goals being put into place. Public areas could have more food gardens. There's a member of the Hamilton staff that's researching community food gardens. I'd like to see more of that in terms of how we allow our public spaces to serve not only for recreation, but meeting basic human needs. So I think I'll leave it for there because I believe it's time for questions.
Okay, Samantha, we're out of time,
Yes.
so there will be no questions.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Okay,
That's
thank
fine.
you for your presentation.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we now have Sport Waikato with Michelle Holland and Matthew Cooper presenting. So you have 10 minutes, your time, 9 minutes, your time's in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.
Thank you.
And just start when you're ready.
Thanks, Mary Andrew. Councillors, management, thanks very much for the opportunity. I acknowledge on behalf of Michelle Hollands and Leanne Stewart from Sport Waikato, acknowledge Council's contribution to sport, recreation and physical activity sector over the last 24, 36 months. There's been some good wins in terms of important wins for our people here in the city, so we acknowledge you for that. I'll just go through some highlighted points in terms of our submission to Hamilton City Council in terms of for consideration. First point is around, and it's really around future needs, future requirement, that Sport Waikato be funded to support the delivery of a district coordinator, a city coordinator, similar to the model we have throughout our other 8 or 9 districts in terms of the provision of sport and recreation and physical activity outcomes. In this absence, we support Council's community advisor recommendations prepared by Bev Gatenby. With the proposal being that to have a community advisors with a focus on sport and recreation to be housed at Sport Waikato. We just believe that that alignment would be quite important for Council to work alongside us in that environment. Point 3, the Sport Waikato continue to be funded to lead the implementation of the facilities plan. We acknowledge and thank Council's contribution to this on a pro rata formula, and there have been obviously some good wins around, and the peak being one, which is a national benchmark case study in New Zealand in terms of that facility. Council worked with Sport Waikato to develop the sport and recreation leisure plan for the city. Again, this is about alignment of work between our strategy and Council's strategy, and I know Amanda Banks is going to be doing work on that. And the last one was around the annual multi-year community grants, to consider how these funds are adjusted for population growth and CPI. That figure, and we acknowledge Council for those grants, but that figures remain the same for quite a long time. Just in investing in your community infrastructure plan, we recommend that the indoor recreation centre, the second one, in partnership with the University of Waikato, be brought forward to years 3 and 4 with the university as a partner in your long-term plan. We know that the University of Waikato and Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic will be asking Council to consider the same request, bringing it forward from 4 or 5 to years 3 and 4. We know that University of Waikato have just spent significant money on an architect. They're serious about this facility. We do not support the proposed Garden Place development and propose that this be replaced by the unfunded sports park drainage improvements inside your 10 years. Improvements to sport is part of the recommendation around sports parks as part of the regional sports facilities plan, and I think partly of that was around the considerable number of cancellations for winter sports occurring that have occurred in recent years. And so again, it's just an important thing. 10 years out, we want to make sure that we fix our sports parks. The unfunded areas really is around Rototuna Park, artificial services. Just asking Council, when you consider development of turf at Rototuna Sports Park, they consider the existing provision of artificial services. So here, Council, is that before investing in artificial services, we recommend a review is needed on these surfaces across sports such as hockey, football, rugby and rugby league, but not only a review just from Council to the locals inside there, but a sub-regional approach towards artificial turf, which includes Waipa, Waikato District as well. And okay. The skate park, we've noted that's in the unbudgeted items there. Council developed a draft skate park development. I think what we're more keen to understand and explore is the West Belt vision around the bowls area there, and consideration for a sport and rec precinct. We love the belt there that we have with Stadium, with Seddon Park, with the green space there, and we just want Council to make sure we think about that in the next 10 years in terms of future sport and rec provision. Thank you, Council, very much again for your support, your service and your commitment. We have certainly, and thank you for your support you've given us this sector over the last 24, 36 months. Sport New Zealand have put in a similar submission, and that is complementary of the Sport Waikato submitted. They are very supportive of what Hamilton City are doing. It's good to have them quite active, a lot more active than they have in previous years, Sport New Zealand, inside Hamilton City and the Waikato. So thank you, Mayor Andrew.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation. Early on, Matthew, you, and I might have misunderstood what you said, you talked about a sports community advisor. Did I hear that right?
The district coordinator, sorry, the city coordinator, Michelle.
Can you just expand on what that is? That's so not a current position, is it?
No.
No. Okay. No.
So you currently have your community advisor team,
yes,
which is what Bev did her review on. Across the remainder of the region, we have a district coordinator funded by the councils in each district. So for us, in terms of
each regional authority,
each local
city
authority,
yeah.
So just for our ability to reach to support the service delivery of clubs in the city, we don't get to them very often, and so. For now, we're just proposing that, I think it's Arnie Nook, who's the one that has the sports focus, that we partner with her more frequently to support the clubs in the city. Yeah.
Is there additional funding associated with that? Sorry, Andrew.
We'd like that to be the case, but we haven't put it forward in this LTP. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to tease out the green belt, the western green belt that you touched on, from Girls High down to the stadium, do you see that as being a sports precinct? Is that what you said, or was it, what, could you just repeat what you said on that area?
We'd like to look at whether that's possible in whichever shape or form. I mean, there's obviously sports facilities in there now. What would be the appropriate mix would need to be explored.
Councillor Dave.
Just on the artificial turf idea, so I take from what you're saying that rugby league or rugby or football couldn't play easily on, say, the existing type of hockey pitch that's about the only artificial ones we have in the city at the moment.
Yeah, that's that new version, councillor, around 3G, 4G, and I think there is a requirement in terms of the depth of the artificial where you can tackle and slide for soccer. Hockey would not be the provision. Hockey, you could play. I suppose you could play the little toddlers, but you couldn't play senior or premier.
So there isn't an artificial surface that would do for all of them.
They're exploring them internationally, but there's not one in New Zealand that does both. Yeah, small ball doesn't travel fast on a long grass is basically it for a hockey ball. Yeah.
We played on long grass when I was playing hockey as a kid.
So did I.
And we were even slower.
Okay, thank you, Matthew and Michelle.
Thanks, Andrew.
Appreciate your presentation. Fiona Bradley. Okay, you're presenting for Hamilton Orchestra.
Hamilton Opera.
Sorry. You have 9 minutes, and the clock's on the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me come today and speak to you. Many of you have heard Hamilton Operatic present before on their passions for the new theatre and for Council to support this. So I'm not going to reiterate all of our arguments before because I think they're very well known. However, I've just come from, I snuck out from a young leaders presentation at Claudelands Arena, and it was fantastic. The event there is sensational. There are thousands and thousands of young leaders there, and the venue is spectacular for that purpose. But what I wanted to say to you today was, having already produced Mary Poppins in that arena, and as a experiment, and I know that some of the submissions that I've heard from people, or even just the comments I've heard from people around, that one of the reasons they didn't want a new theatre was that we have the Claudelands Event Centre, and that would do fine. And so I thought it was really pertinent to come today, especially after the percentages were brought out from your recent, and knowing the number of people, even in Hamilton Operatic, that filled some of the questions in incorrectly. I just thought it was really important for you to know that actually, despite all the amazing support we got from H3 to put Mary Poppins on, it didn't work. One, it was horrendously expensive and we can never ever use it again, despite, like I said, H3's support, which we really appreciated. But the public perception was against us. We didn't get the public in the way we thought we would. We know if it had been founders, we would have filled that easily and an amazing profit for Mary Poppins, as other societies did around the country. Simply put, it did not represent a beautiful theatre, and that is what people go to see our amazing productions. They want to see a theatre, and with the best will in the world, the Claudelands Event Centre did not provide that. So I felt it was really important that while that's an amazing facility, it is not an amazing facility for theatre, and we desperately need our own theatre. I think you all also should know that I'm so very confident that that will go ahead, that I've already booked the act for the beautiful new theatre in 2021, and it's a spectacular show. So for that reason alone, I really want it to go ahead. It's an amazing show. So, but that was my main submission. The other one that I've heard from a lot of people was the worry around parking, which, you know, personally think when I've been all over the world seeing shows, and to be able to park right next to the theatre would be just amazing in the middle of London, for instance. But that's it's a pertinent thought from people, and I know when I was in Hamilton the other night, it is a scary place on a Friday and Saturday night. It's looking quite derelict in places. And I understand the older people in particular who are a major audience for a theatre. I can understand their worries. And yes, we do have parking close by, we know that. But in similar theatres around the world, they often will have a shuttle that take patrons from the theatre straight to a car park, and they just circle around all the car parks. And that's, to me, a fantastic idea for our theatre once it's built. I think it would be great, particularly for people who are not very mobile, because you can only have so many special parking spaces. So I wanted to put that forward as to eliminate a detractor for the theatre. So thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Hey, just to clarifying on your point about the Mary Poppins down at Clauden's, you said the public was against you, or the production, I assume is what you meant. Was that because it just didn't technically work, or is there a perception thing?
It's a perception thing in the first instance, but...
Can you expand on that? What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Most people do not think of Clauden's Event Centre as a theatre. A theatre has a special feeling. So every theatre that you go into the world, around the world, when you walk in, you get that feeling that's really hard to describe, that you're in an exclusive space specifically for performance. And when you go into Clauden's Event Centre, you don't get that. Yes, it's great for some of the rock shows and things like that, which don't need that feeling. But with things like acoustics, the seating, whether it's comfortable, is it easy to get up and down, some of our older people said it wasn't. Those sorts of things, when you walked in, you actually walked in through with black curtains everywhere. There is absolutely no ambience of a theatre when you walk into a space like that. A cavernous area that's been sort of cloaked off is substandard, frankly. And it was only because our lighting people were so amazing, for which we had to pay a lot more, of course, that they were able to project a feeling in the theatre. But there was an awful lot of people who said they absolutely loved the show, and the show was amazing, and that's because everyone pulled out all the stops to make the show, but they would prefer not to go back there and are much happier to wait for a new theatre.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Just one question. So what's the new show? The first one?
I can't tell you, I'm not allowed to.
Worth a crack. It's all right.
But it's going to be wicked. Just going to be amazing.
There's the giveaway line. All right.
I didn't say anything. It'll be stunning. Yes. So hopefully you let us open it, or they do. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Okay, Andrew. So you're presenting as an individual? Yes. Okay. So you have 4 minutes. It's up on the bottom right-hand corner, including questions. Thank you.
Hello, everyone and respected people here. It's my pleasure to be here today. I, Anju Sethi, came to New Zealand in 2004. Since then, I'm living here, and I work in hospital in intensive care unit as an associate charge nurse manager. It is a fact that the world has changed, and we are more interconnected, and technological advances and globalization have considerably reduced the distance. And it is my privilege to have the opportunity today to exchange views on how city can bring the revenue. Hamilton population is rising day by day, and I came from the busy city of New Delhi in India, and where it's quite crowded, and we see people everywhere. In 2004, when I came here, after my shift, I wouldn't find any place to go, especially in the evening, market get closed. And I was thinking, in the weekend, where should I take my children? And it was not possible for me to take my children to Tapo or Turua every week because of my shift work. And I was saying, and at this time, I just get a chance to what I can think that Hamilton can have something. And currently, I'm involved in arranging a conference in Hamilton. And when the people ask me, the conference people ask me if they bring the family here, what they can do for if but their family can go and get busy with them. That's what I'm thinking, that if we have something like amusement parks, puzzle world, that's only couple of puzzle worlds in the world, and if we have one here in Hamilton, then it will be easy that the people can go there and see the things, and that will bring jobs for the Hamilton people, and we can bring our city rates down, that we can have some revenue. And I'm just thinking that Rotorua doesn't, Hamilton doesn't have any natural feature as the Rotorua, Taupo, and Wellington things have. And why can't we build anything that we can bring the tourists here? And instead of that, when the people start tourists come to Auckland and they just start traveling from SH1 to going back to Wellington or somewhere, and they can stop here in Hamilton and spend some revenue, and we can do something and bring the city rates down. That was I was thinking. I'm not sure whether is it right thing to say or not. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Anjan, you said Hamilton doesn't have any natural features. We have the biggest river in the country going through.
But it's the biggest river, that's true. But how many people go and sit there and enjoy? And most of the time, weather is not good. And people like me who don't want to go out when it's wet.
There's not much we can do about the rain, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking, that we can have something covered like Puzzle World or amusement bed.
Like what, sorry?
Puzzle World.
Oh, okay, I'm not aware of that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, Roger Stratford. Thank you, Roger. You have 4 minutes. The clock's on the bottom right-hand screen.
Wonderful. I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. My submission is very much, although I've chosen option 2, this is very much an endorsement of what the council was proposing in terms of the rates. I just feel that if the council is looking for simplicity, then 10% increase is obviously more simple. Choosing not to do away with the UAGC proposal, and in terms of speeding up capital or land to capital valuing, the concept of speed has not been defined, so I've chosen to as long as people know that's going to happen, then that should be fine. I'm semi-retired. I first moved here in 1976, and we, as a family, started living in Melville, so we all found that cycling was difficult to get. That's a contained area. You're pretty much trapped by the Cobham Drive network in terms of cycling. I couldn't really, as a child, move out of that area, and that's why I've chosen the preferred area of development to be Rotokauri rather than Peacock. So for the access of cycling, the terrain is much flatter, I believe, I understand. Some of my points in my submission would be much better in another forum, so I won't, obviously won't have time, but I won't go into those here. I would like to just say that, yes, I have endorsed all the 9 projects, and in terms of just going back to the transport issue, I believe that a roundabout for Mill Street is probably required because there are so many vehicles that are doing U-turns, illegal U-turns. I've personally witnessed that. One of the And I've got a proposal since writing my submission, and that's we're putting up a Christmas tree at Christmas. I think that most Hamiltonians visit the city over the Christmas, New Year's time, and I think it would be a good idea to put the Christmas tree up at winter solstice. So we have a winter solstice tree, and we just do that for a trial period of 2 to 3 years, see how that goes. There's more people available in the city to have a look at it, I believe. Thanks. I'll take questions.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Roger, for your submission. I get that. I just want to respect, and it was good, thank you, respectfully point out under item 2, the law doesn't allow for that.
Martin, I'm not here to have people corrected. I'd rather, we're here to listen.
Thank you.
If you want to correct Roger, you can do that.
Yeah, no,
afterwards.
that's
not
fine.
in a public forum, please.
And no discourtesy intended. No discourtesy. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for your presentation, Roger. Okay, we'll now have James Alexander Hope. And you're here as an individual submitter? Yes. So your time is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. It'll be 8 minutes.
Kia ora, Pēra.
I take it you're presenting in...
Te reo Māori.
Yes. Okay, so 8 minutes on the bottom right-hand corner, and that includes questions. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa o te kaunihira, ko te koro matua.
Greetings to everyone, and warm greetings to the Mayor today.
Kia koe hoki, Councillor Simcock, ki te hau ia koe tērā wiki.
Greetings to you, Councillor Simcock, and hi.
I ki te hau ia i tērā wiki.
Who I'd seen last.
Tuatahi kei te mihi atu, kia kingi tūheitia e noho nei ki runga I te ahurewa tapu o na mātua tīpuna, kia ora te kahuiari.
I acknowledge the Māori King who sits on the thrones, his forebearers, and those of the royal family.
Ko aku take e pēnei ana, tuatahi, e pāna ki te whiriwhiringa Peacocks Road, Roto Kauri rānei.
I have 2 issues to raise with Council through my submissions, one referring to Roto and the other to Peacocks.
Kare au I te tautoko ki a tipu te taone ki Peacocks, aha kua he wāhi rahi, kare kau he rori te wai, te hiko, wheketere, era momo mea I reira.
I do not support the proposed developments for Peacocks due to the high costs for the developments of infrastructure there.
Nā reira, ka tino tautoko au kia tupu ake te taone ki Roto Kauri.
However, I do support the proposed developments in Roto Kauri.
Aha kua wāhi iti, e tata ana ki ngā wāhi hoko kai, hoko taonga, whakangahau mira momo mea.
Although the proposed developments are small, for me it is about the proximity to facilities that would support the developments there.
Taku kōrero whakamutunga mo tērā, kia kaua e tere tupu te taone. Kai uaua mo ngā tangata e utu ana I ngā reti.
In summary, I do not support the fast-paced growth of Hamilton City because of the due stress that may be put on ratepayers.
Te take tuarua me reo Māori ngā tohu o te taone.
The second point I would like to raise in my submission is that I support bilingual signage within Hamilton City.
Ko ngā take mo tērā e pēnei ana. Ka whakamana tērā I te reo Māori, te reo tuatahi o te whenua nei.
The reason I support bilingual languages is because it supports the growth and development of te reo Māori throughout Hamilton City.
Te reo tuatahi o te whenua nei.
And it being the official language of New Zealand.
Ka whakamana hoki tērā I te reo Pākehā, nā te me noho tahi ana tērā I te reo Māori.
So that both languages, English and te reo Māori, may exist together.
Tuatoru, ki te āwhina, ki te pupuri I ngā ingoa tawhito o te whenua nei.
That we celebrate and support the historical names of Hamilton City.
Ki te tautoko mahi a te whare wānanga o Waikato he wāhi rongo nui mo te whakaako I te reo Māori.
And that we support the education programs of the University of Waikato that raises the profile of the Māori language.
Taku kōrero whakamutunga mo tēnei kaupapa. Ka tai mai ngā manene, ngā tūruhi ki ākarana, ka heke ngā wakarererangi, ka whakaro, ka haere kiwhia ki te kite I te ao Māori.
We have a lot of visitors from overseas that visit our country and who, from the time of their landing in Auckland, descend down to Rotorua.
Ka haere ki Rotorua, kāri te peka mai ki kone.
They bypass Hamilton in favour of Rotorua.
Ko whakapau moni, he pai te whakapau. Whakapau moni te kauni hera nei ki te whakatū I te I ngā māra Māori, te whare taonga Māori, me rātu wāhi. Engari, kāre ngā tūruhi e peka mai ki konei ka haere tika tonu atu ki Rotorua.
The council has done a great job in supporting tourism in Hamilton City with the gardens and also our museum, but we don't do enough to support holding tourism in Hamilton City.
Mehe mea reo Māori, ngā tohu, ngā wāhi, ngā reo e rua. Ki konei, tērā pēr, ka pai ake tēnei taone I a Rotorua. E whakaro.
I believe that if we have a bilingual city, that would encourage tourism to remain, or tourist dollars to remain in Hamilton City.
Ai, kōrero whakamutunga, kei te tino tautoko au kia whakatungia he tūranga hi Māori kei runga I te kauni hera nei hei waha mō ngā whakaro Māori, te ao Māori I kona.
And finally, I'd just like to make the point that I do support having Māori representation on the council to support council decision-making processes.
Kia ora tātou, ko tahi miniti e toi ana mō ngā tātai.
Okay, question, Councillor Mark.
Kia ora, James. Bunting, taku ingoa. Thank you for your submission. I very much enjoyed it. With regards to street name translations, would that include names, changing names of streets, or are you talking more directional signs and informational signs?
Ngā me e rua, kare au I te ki me tini ngā ingoa.
So he supports both options. Doesn't propose that names be changed.
Okay. Right.
And koetahi he ngā wari te whakamāori, koetahi kāre tae.
Some names are easier to translate, some are just too difficult.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Thank you for your excellent submission. Would you see a parallel with the Republic of Ireland where central government and local government promotes obviously Irish and English as bilingual? I'm just looking at an example society which is close to many of our hearts, and that is Ireland. Would you see that as an example for New Zealand?
kānata hoki, Canada hoki, mo te reo wiwi me te reo Pākehā I rei. E orite ana, e mana tahi ana ngā reo e rua.
Yes, he agrees with that, but also in Canada, the example of Canada, where French and English are the languages of that country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Kia ora tātou.
Mark Scroder. Mark, firstly, I apologise for keeping you waiting. Are you presenting as an individual?
I think so. There's only one of me.
Okay. And you have 4 minutes, which will be down on the bottom right-hand corner, including questions. Thank you.
Okay. I came to Hamilton in '72. I've been here more or less ever since. Been retired for getting on for 20 years. Oh, okay. So I glare at this thing. I'm perfectly happy with increases in rates that the city must eventually start to live within its income and pay off debt. That being said, I don't have any particular preference in how the rates are increased. What I do dislike is that Hamilton, along with almost all other cities, expands. It takes up good farmland and reduces it to rubble, essentially. It is no longer available for feeding the world, or even New Zealanders. Part of this runs counter to one of Tainui's objectives, which is the guardianship of the land. Tainui, I think, has, in search of dollars, perverted that issue. It has created the base, which has taken up good land. It is creating its inland port, which is taking up good land and making it money. I feel that the council and Tainui, in fact, although they're distinct and different entities, need to talk to one another more often and better. Okay, end of that particular sermon. I support the idea that passenger transport between Auckland and Hamilton is probably a good idea. I also wish to point out that that particular stretch of line needs to be electrified. Now, I think Hamilton should push both sides of that. It will make the operation of New Zealand Railways significantly troublesome. Now, at a very local level, I live at present in the university ghetto, and what I see there is that the university's response to parking is to price students out of it. The result is that they occupy narrow streets, they are narrow residential streets, and they do so all day regardless of parking signs. They park on the berm, which I believe is against council regulations, and it becomes actually quite dangerous in a number of places. I don't know if you've seen O'Donoghue Street, but it leads into Vesti Avenue. Buses go there. With parking on both sides, it takes a coalition of the willing to enable traffic to proceed. We need better control of parking. Now, concerning Hamilton City developments, this goes to question 8. In the context of coming back into a debt-free situation, most of these propositions are at best expendable. And I don't think they deserve to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Mark. Mark, your concerns about urban sprawl, which I think is what you're talking about.
Yes.
Are you concerned that if farming and cropping becomes more productive and needs less land to produce the same amount or more food, would you still be against sprawl? Or are you against sprawl per se, or are you genuinely concerned about feeding people?
I'm concerned with feeding people. Increased production per acre only goes so far.
Hasn't stopped yet, though, has it?
Just one question, thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
It's reaching limiting.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Look, you said about Council and Tainui should talk more to each other. Did you mean we from them, or did you mean something else?
I think that you could both learn from each other.
Right. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Like what?
No, I simply suspect that these are two bodies which are pursuing their own pathway independently without adequate consultation one with another.
Thank you.
Okay, and Chris Allen, General Manager of Roads, could you, just before you go, Mr. Schroeder point out...
Schroeder. I advocate multiculturalism, not just bilingualism.
Apologies. Particularly Donahue Street and over by the university, where it's very difficult to negotiate a bus down without the cars being parked up on the berms on either side, and whether you need to look at whether there's park on one side or whatever. I just think you need to get that into your schedule. Just pick up, because it's not really a 10-year plan issue, but it is an issue. It is a streets issue that you missed because you were out of the room.
Yes.
Lovely. Appreciate that. Thanks very much for your presentation. So is Jatender Tumar here? No. Okay. So that's the last presentation before lunch. So we'll break for lunch. We'll be back at 1:45. Thank you.